You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Hello and welcome to Force 13's live coverage on Typhoon Noru, which is approaching the coast of Vietnam as a strong Category 3 typhoon. It's let itself go a little bit since yesterday when it was looking very powerful indeed. But now it is still a strong storm and it's approaching the coast. A very difficult situation that we have on our hands right now, where there are two major cyclones active at the same time on opposite sides of the world. We're covering Noru now for the next 3 hours, because that's really the most important time in Vietnam in the evening. And then later on today, for our viewers in the United States, we'll be running coverage on Ian with the same format as we did yesterday, around the same time slot as well, from 3 PM till 11 Eastern Time. But for the next 3 hours here, we are looking at predominantly Typhoon Noru moving in towards Vietnam shortly. We expect that landfall will occur sometime in the morning, and it could be a very powerful impact. It's the main concern for the closest point to land that's a significant town or city would be Danang, which is quite close to the center of the storm. We have some live cams in the area as well, although one of them has just stopped transmitting for a moment. So let's see if we can grab the other one right now. This is a view out of Danang right now in central Vietnam, and you can see there a pretty wet picture. Quite hard to see from that high angle everything that's going on the ground, but from what we've seen on some other cameras, there's very wet conditions, a few vehicles going about there. It's quite calm. I think those are emergency vehicles there, so the situation in Vietnam is quiet ahead of this major typhoon landfall. My name is Nathan Foy here in the studio once again, and I am joined in this hour by Soham and Trin, two of our Indian members here to talk to us about what's going on with this storm. Soham, first of all, you're one of our main cyclone analysts. What can you tell us about Noru's appearance and what's happened within the storm in the last 24 hours?
Overnight, Noru developed an extremely small pinhole eye on microwave, and then pretty much exploded overnight. So it reached around 125 knots based on radar velocity, is what we went to peak. And after that, ever since then, the storm has started slowing down a little as it starts moving, as it starts bearing down the storm, and as a result, the easterly shear vector has increased dramatically to around 25 knots for the latest model readings. And so, thankfully, the storm is weakening now. Our latest imagery, as the eye is gone, and our imagery shows a definite shear tail on the northern side and southern side of the central dense overcast.
Well,
It's
still,
down to around 100 knots analysis.
yep. Well,
And hopefully it should continue for weakening from here on out.
yes, probably, and that's actually what some of the models were suggesting. We were a bit worried here that the some of the JTWC cones were going all the way to a Category 4 landfall. Thankfully, it looks like that's not going to happen as we look at another one of these webcams showing some surface water there on that road. I saw a few motorcycles move through that area shortly ago, and I imagine those conditions are pretty tricky. People can lose control on surfaces like that. Looks very wet. And that is set to continue. It is going to be a massive rainmaker with potentially over 15 inches in this region, where we could see potential for flooding and landslides. 15 inches in millimeters. There's another emergency vehicle, I think. In millimeters, that is well over 300 inches in total amounts. So massive rainfall potential as well as strong winds. So this is Danang right now, which is very close to where the storm is expected to make landfall, and that will be an area that could receive significant typhoon force winds in excess of 160 kilometers per hour. So far on these webcams, we're not seeing very much in the way of strong winds. A little bit breezy on those trees in the distance. It's mainly persistent and at times heavy rainfall that we've got falling here right now as we look at this camera. Regrettably, we don't have as much satellite imagery as we would have liked under normal circumstances. For some reason, we've got large outages which are affecting most satellite products on RAM. So we only have a few little shots of the typhoon from satellite. We've got the essentials, but we don't have, or usually we get a multitude of different viewpoints that we can look at, but we only have
Well,
about
we
three.
still do have a couple of them. We still
Yeah,
do have a couple of them, like Dapia.
right. I can't link that though right now, so I don't know if any of you could screen share that later on. But in the meantime, we're looking at this wider shot of the South China Sea region, and you can see the storm's influence quite large. The eye feature has been disintegrating, and very large
Okay.
areas of high cloud tops, and we expect very high rain rates. As always, we are here live on the air and we're happy to take questions. It's 7 minutes past 9 in Vietnam, Indochina time zone, and I'm sure there are many people watching from that region. Start your message with Force 13, all in text. Rem EO, thank you very much for your support this evening. How will Typhoon Noru become strong typhoon again?
It's unlikely at this point. With increasing shear, it's not. I think it's on a terminal weakening trend now.
Yeah, I think so. Depends what
That
you
being
mean by
said,
strong typhoon, because it still is one.
despite its weakening, the severe amount of monsoonal banding that's to the west of the storm has been causing prolonged rainfall in the entire
Mm.
over the Vietnam landfall region. So flooding will remain a severe threat long before and after the storm landfalls.
Now we recognise there'll be a lot of interest regarding Ian right now as well. We'll take a periodic look at the storm during this coverage this morning, local time. Look at that right now, really impressive looking hurricane emerging off the coast of Cuba, and it looks like the worst case scenario is going to be realised for the southwestern coast of Florida. Major storm surge impacts, probably, and I would take very seriously evacuation orders for the whole region, because I think this is going to be the real deal and the worst landfall in the area in 101 years. But our main coverage on Ian will begin at what time? At I don't even know where I am anymore.
Around
At
in
3 p.m.
4
Eastern
hours.
time.
4 hours. So in about 4 hours.
5 hours from now, I think. 3 p.m. Eastern time, we'll be covering that storm a lot more. But for now, for our Vietnamese audience, we are mainly covering Typhoon Noru this evening, local time. And it's very, we're at times we're not we're sort of a lose-lose scenario in which we can't cover both storms simultaneously in the best quality that we can, so we have to hop from one to the other. But this is Typhoon Noru once again. They're rating it at around 115 miles per hour. And what was the pressure?
Last I checked, the pressure, according to our estimates, was 955 millibars.
Yep, so not as strong as it was, but still a powerful typhoon that's going to be moving through later on in the morning hours, local time, probably by around daybreak actually. So there is that webcam shot looking on a street here in the middle of Danang, looking out along that road which is very waterlogged, and we expect that that rainfall will continue to drop all over that area. Here is a rainfall chart showing the maximum amounts we could expect in some of these areas. For some reason my probe tool isn't working, but if you zoom into this area, this is around the Danang zone. You can just about make out the coastline. All of those red zones there, that's around 10 inches of rain, 250 millimeters or higher. And if you enter the pink zone there, that is around, here we are, 15, 16 inches, which is 400 millimeters around that area. And all around here, just plot a few of these around the Danang region, 12, 13 inches in some places, which is pushing 300 millimeters and higher. Very high amounts of rain, even inland there as well. I think that might be in Laos by that point. 16 inches in one spot there inland. Once again, 400 millimeters, so very dangerous potential for rainfall. And further up the coast as well, towards Vin, we're looking at possibly up towards 400 millimeters of rain there as well. So a very wet storm this will be, even if it does continue to collapse and weaken substantially. That's Typhoon Noru. We've also got Smitty with us right now. Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Now,
Can you hear me?
yeah, we've got you.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up the radars right now.
Now are you still looking at Ian?
No, I'm looking at
Oh.
Noru.
Right, yes, I'm sure there are radars along there somewhere. I've not had the chance to check up on those.
Yes, I found the website for the raw radar data, so I'm just pulling it up right now.
Great, and that will be able to tell us a lot about what we're looking at. Once again, this is a very high view here, must be mounted on a tower or somewhere, looking out over the quite deserted streets here. Looks like the middle of Danang, and very light vehicular traffic. Of course, well, it's not that late in the night yet, but people clearly are taking heed to the warnings that will have been issued ahead of this storm. They expect it to make landfall as at least a Category 2, with winds of over 160 kilometers per hour sustained. And looking down there once again, you can see a few trees around. There's definitely a lot of rain falling, but generally it doesn't look that breezy yet, which is interesting because when we take a look at the storm's position, let me just figure out how far it is from land now. We're probably looking at it
Not
being
very happy.
not very
Rain viewer
happy.
isn't cooperating with me.
Oh, I see.
No, I'm trying to open it.
About 255 kilometers from Danang is where the center of this storm is right now. Well, I've gotten to use Rain Viewer a lot myself recently. They actually followed me on Twitter the other day or yesterday, so thank you to them. And they have a really cool website which shows radars from all around the world. Not always the best quality versions of the radars, but it's really faultless in terms of its aerial coverage. It's the most comprehensive radar display that I've seen.
Yeah, composite at least.
Yeah, composite worldwide. I mean, why didn't anyone else think of that earlier?
Yeah, it's probably just hard to get all the sources, so...
Here is some imagery showing the eye approaching the coast. You can just about make out the coast of Vietnam there, in the gaps between those radar slots.
I have the radar up.
So I imagine you're showing us the same thing as I've just brought it up as well here. Oh, you're looking at a different source. All right. So you're looking
Yeah, this
at
is the raw source.
Yeah, let's have a look at this. And I just need to fix my screen display. There we go. So you're looking at the raw data from the Vietnamese weather agency.
I'm just getting a closer radar station, but you can see the eye wall approaching.
At times, I imagine due to load, it'll be a bit of a slow, very slow to load.
Yeah. You can go back to your
Yeah,
screen
whilst we wait for
when
that,
it loads up.
just show you
Yep.
this imagery.
Oh wait, it loaded up. Okay, there we go.
And gradual movement
My bad.
towards the coast.
I'll keep this playing. See some very high rain rates.
I can't quite read that scale. What is the
Oh,
what
it's
does
just
yellow
it's
begin?
DBZ.
All right.
The yellow is just like very heavy rain. It's not like millimeters per hour. It's like the ones the Americans use, DBZ decibels.
So yeah, looks like a wide area of rain moving through. Some of the bands reaching the coast of Vietnam, just north of Cang Ngai and near Tam Kỳ is where it looks like there's quite a bit of rain falling, and Danang getting a few heavy parts there in the last hour or so. Looks like they might be in a little bit of a quiet. No, actually they're not really in a quieter slot. They're getting lots of yellows. So
I posted an interesting mimic TC imagery, which shows the evolution of Noru's internal structure over the last 24 hours. It shows Noru actually had an eye wall replacement cycle in between. Interestingly.
Here it is. Look how tiny that eye was. That pinhole that we were looking at.
Yeah.
Real crazy stuff. And then, yep, the eye wall replacement cycle. And now the structure is, I would say, a lot weaker because there's really not much there on the northern side.
Yeah, the easterly shore cracked the northern eye wall open.
Northern eye wall open, yeah. So
anyways, pretty good news for us. That means it will be weaker than anticipated at landfall.
do you think it could still hold Category 3 though?
I doubt it, considering we are already considering we are already at a low end Category 3 status at the moment, and there's still like what 6 to 12 hours before landfall. No, I don't see it holding out to Category 3 by landfall.
We'll take questions on anything. Of course, we know there's a lot of people interested in Ian. We're mainly focusing on Noru for these 3 hours, whilst it's peak hours in Vietnam. And then we'll be taking a 2-hour break, and then we'll be doing our question and answer phone in on Ian from 3 p.m. till 11 p.m. Eastern Time. A comment here, did you say that there was another storm forming behind Typhoon Noru on the GFS? Well, I'll tell you what, this morning the GFS has really backed off on that, and I would only make it a small chance of developing.
I'm not surprised because the ECMWF did not have it either. Many of the other models didn't have it either.
GFS was so confident for so long though, hey? But, well, that sometimes happens. Still does have a low pressure system along the coast of Vietnam, which could deliver a lot more unwanted rain. But that would just be a low pressure system and not an organised storm. Will Ian reach 150 to 155 miles per hour, or even worse condition, a Category 5?
Up in the air, I would say less. Not that very likely, but not out of the question either.
Unfortunately, I agree. Will the rain bands of Typhoon Noru affect Malaysia and produce possible life-threatening flash flood and landslide conditions there?
For that, we'll have to zoom out and see and look at the overall structure.
I do
I
have a
don't
zoomed
have
out
any
slide.
information that it did landslide or severe rainstorm in Malaysia, but it's affecting Cambodia and Thailand and parts of Vietnam. Actually, there are flood warning in Cambodia and Vietnam at this moment.
There's a much wider viewpoint, and you can see that it is enhancing, by the looks of things, some monsoonal showers over the Malay Peninsula.
There are some monsoonal lows over Cambodia,
Yeah,
so it's
that's the
enhancing.
equatorial inflow from Noru over there.
And I actually
Yeah, that's
saw
the
a
equatorial inflow from Noru over there.
yeah, and that stretches all the way into the South Indian Ocean. I remember seeing that on a wider shot earlier.
Yeah, its influence is so strong. It's actually shearing Ashley down in the
jeez.
southwest Indian Ocean.
Yes, if you haven't heard the news,
There
we
are
do.
some heavy rain, I guess, over Bangkok or somewhere there, about 95 millimeter or something like that,
Oh,
due to those monsoon lows. And the flood warnings are and affected people nearly 2,500 in Cambodia, I have heard. So it will be just a nightmare there after Typhoon Noru struck there.
if you didn't hear the news, Tropical Storm Ashley was named in the South Indian Ocean.
Yes, yes, I.
Bounty
sorry.
We
France.
have the latest 12Z forecast score for Ashley, I think, as well. So here you go, Nathan. It's in the live output chat now.
All right, let's just have a quick look at this here. A pretty straightforward cone there. That's Ashley. I believe that's Diego Garcia just up the top left there, right in the middle of the South Indian Ocean. But another big surprise, and by some estimates, this is actually the third storm to form in the South Indian Ocean before the end of September. So a season that's had 3 surprises, because usually we don't see the first storm until at least late October.
That being said, the Southwest Indian Ocean does have a notorious tendency to form off-season storms out of nowhere. I've even
this
produced
year
a category 4 in October once.
This
Which
year
one?
Indian Ocean is a bit of highly active.
I believe
would say.
that category 4 was Anais in 2012, I think it was.
Oh, was that in October?
Yep, a category 4 in October.
Let's get some more questions. George says, why do small and compact storms that cross the Philippines and survive most of the time enlarge substantially in the South China Sea?
You'll have to rephrase that question.
Well, the main answer really is that they get much larger in the South China Sea pretty much because they get their core disrupted. It forces an eyeball replacement cycle. That always increases the wind field. And I think that's just the fact of landfalls in general, doesn't it, Soham? It just...
basically inner core being redistributed over a wider area because of the damage from friction. So the storm becomes automatically broader as a result.
Yep, and it just fans out, and it has another crack at intensifying, which Noru did rather successfully. I know lots of, a few people were suggesting, goodness me, is it going to get to Category 5 status for a second time here in the South China Sea? Well, thankfully that didn't happen, but it did get to mid-range Category 4. I think you had it peaking at 145 miles per hour, didn't you?
Yeah, based on radar velocity values.
And so did...
Vietnam.
Yeah, and JTWC also went with 145, I think, and now down to...
They actually overrided it to 150.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So a powerful second peak there as well, but thankfully slowly starting to weaken as it approaches the coast of Vietnam. Let's see if we can have another view right now live in Danang. This is what it currently looks like, with heavy rain continuing on this street here. Someone with very bright headlights up ahead. Looks like they're not moving. And lots of rainfall pooling along the road there, and... Pardon?
I was saying that there's really breezy condition in Danang. It recorded 62 kph wind around 09Z today.
I
And there's
didn't catch that,
also
unfortunately.
in West and pardon
In
me. I was saying that it's really breezy condition
I
in
should also
Danang.
point
It
out.
recorded
Yeah. I mean, it is getting a little bit breezy when we look at this video.
It recorded 62 kph wind around 09Z Danang gust.
Once again, these are two viewpoints that we've got around Danang right now, where it is getting a bit breezier. Rain still persistent. A few vehicles still on the roads at this time, but I've seen probably more emergency vehicles than I have private vehicles. So most people are probably hunkered down. Category 2 conditions probably for this area. Danang is halfway up the coast of Vietnam, one of the main settlements along the eastern coast. And to be honest, it's an area that is quite prone to typhoon impacts with its geography, and Vietnam has had a lot of typhoon landfalls in the last few years. But there we go. Let's see if we can get some more comments and questions live on the air. We will talk about both systems, but we're mainly covering Noru for the time being. Why do small... Oh, we had that one, sorry. Is there possible tornadoes in Typhoon Noru?
This is more of a question. I don't think that I haven't heard of any tornado reports, though I may be wrong on this front. But I'll look into local news see if there's any.
With typhoons, there's always a chance of, well, any tropical system is always a chance of tornadoes spinning up. I don't know how prevalent it is on Noru because, well, there's not the radar system they have isn't very good, so I can't really detect if there's a bunch of little supercells. But, I mean, yeah, there could definitely be a tornado threat.
Let's throw it back to that radar imagery. Give you an idea of what it's showing here, and it's consistent with microwave, suggesting that there really isn't very much there on the northern side of the eye wall. Really quite bare, actually. There's not much there at all. Whether that's fully true or not remains to be seen, but half an eye wall is what we're seeing. It is the southern side that's by far the stronger side, and if it keeps going in that direction, I'm still getting familiar with the geography, to be honest, but I'm just trying to calculate where that's going to end up. Go look really closely. I think if it keeps moving westwards, it will end up making landfall near Tam Key, which is south of Danang. So actually, when we keep looking at this, Danang might get away with the very much weaker northern side. Of course, storms that make landfall here sometimes have a tendency of scooting a little bit further north when they reach the coast. There's something else that I was going to move on to. What was it? Oh yeah, the JWC forecast cone. That's what they had at the last advisory. Surely this is more up to date now. Let's see if there's a new update. There we go. That's the latest JWC cone. They're going with 120 miles per hour, and they're calling for they're actually saying a landfall north of Danang due to its, or pretty much squarely on Danang due to the storm's slightly north of west movement, according to them. Looks more westerly to me, but certainly that wriggle room that could take it a little bit further north that would be very key to what actually happens. calling for a 105 mile an hour landfall there. That's 170 kilometers per hour sustained winds. So things could get very messy over in the Danang area and up towards Hue as well. But as far as I can see, it's going to be just south of Danang that was going to get probably the worst conditions, considering the south side of the eye wall looks much worse on radar right now than the northern side. Of course, here we have regular updates on Ian, and it looks quite a beast right now, I'm afraid to say. There it is on some visible imagery as it clears the coast of Cuba, looking even better than it did when it was arriving, with an eye becoming more clear, rather symmetrical eye wall, and it is an absolute monster, a donut shape forming there, and still the sky is the limit for this storm, which could rapidly intensify even further as it approaches southwestern Florida. I'm pretty much committed to saying here that it's going to be a worst case scenario that was going to verify. I don't think there's a way out of it at this point. Tampa Bay is locked in. So it's going to be a major situation that happens over the next couple of days as it moves through the Florida Peninsula. We'll be doing proper coverage on Ian in full with an 8-hour long phone in on our Discord server if you want to join that and discuss live with us. discord.gg/force13. You can also chat with over 4,000 weather watchers and hurricane trackers on there in our community chat rooms. But that is Ian. The National Hurricane Center will update on Ian in a little while with the next major advisory, so we'll obviously pick that up. But this stream is mainly focused on Typhoon Noru as it approaches the coast of Vietnam. We're expecting landfall in the morning hours, maybe around 6 a.m. is the best indication that we've got at the moment. Let's see if we have some more questions and comments. What is the rainfall estimate in Hanoi? I would say estimated rain over the next 7 days. You could be looking at up to 10 inches, which is 250 millimeters. Maybe even a little bit higher than that if the storm goes further north. Another comment there. How about Ho Chi Minh City? So that is obviously much further south. Your rain amounts are not going to be as high, but there could still be isolated amounts in your area of maybe 5 inches, which is around just over 120 millimeters. So that is a possibility. Substantial amounts of rain further south. You can see on that satellite imagery, Ho Chi Minh is sort of on the edge of the significant bands from the storm, but it's so expansive on the western side, moving right through the whole Indochina subcontinent right now, dropping heavy rains over thousands of square miles. Some more comments here. There's a tornado watch for the counties south of Lake Okeechobee now, apparently. And it is going to be a heavy day, possibly for tornado activity for Florida. We'll pick up all of that latest news on our live stream at 3 p.m. Eastern. In the meantime, if you are still interested in Ian, of course, we have our automated feeds, live satellite imagery on the Force 13 main channel, and our US channel is also doing live coverage on the storm. I think it's still automated at the moment, but I'm not sure if there might be a team trying to organize there for a live event regarding tornadic activity for Florida on Force 13 US, so you may also want to check that out. Jules says, do you know what the other storm in the Atlantic might do? There is still a chance of formation, a high chance I think from the National Hurricane Center for a system in the central Atlantic, but it shouldn't go very far. It's probably going to remain in the central Atlantic and have a short life and a pretty weak peak, and gradually move northwestwards through the central Atlantic and dissipate before getting very far. What is the temperature of Typhoon Noru? I don't know if you're referring to the eye or if you're referring to the cloud tops, but
Well, if you want the eye temperature, give me a second here. I'll load up a I'll load up the algorithm and I'll get back to you.
There's an
But I think-
algorithm?
yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's an algorithm that detects temperatures on the warmest and the coldest on the storm in IR.
Oh, cool.
So the warmest temperature is minus 64.3 degrees Celsius in the eye, and the coldest cloud tops are touching minus 89 degrees.
They are quite high cloud tops there. And once again, you can see from this imagery, most of that convection is on the south side of the centre as well, which just underlines how the southern side is much stronger than the northern side here. Not what usually happens in these events. It's usually the northern side that's a bit more stronger, but most of the convection is on the south side. The eye wall is open on the northern side. We know that from microwave imagery. And it's getting closer and closer to landfall, and it does, the more you look at that imagery, it still looks like it's moving west and landfall would be south of Danang, but JTWC think it will be right over town, so still not sure what might happen with that yet. There's one or two people in the
Depends
chat
on-
saying it's gotten very windy in Danang. I'm not seeing too much windy conditions there, but it is breezy. There's that live shot again. So
That one probably 62
Yeah.
kph cast in jet. Hello?
yeah, we're still here.
Yeah, so condition is pretty busy there. I'd say.
Busy.
Breezy, windy.
Oh, windy, breezy. Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
Certainly not busy. Just didn't quite understand what you said. Luckily, the streets are rather empty, which is obviously good news. It is potentially dangerous out there. Lots of rain falling, spooling along the road there. You saw that car pull into that entranceway on the left-hand side earlier, and it was channeling through water up to the wheel. Only a little, not too much surface water, but it was still up to maybe half a foot along the pavement, along the side of the road. So definitely substantial rainfall already in this location, and we're expecting another quite a lot of rain on the way, with estimated totals of maybe in excess of 15 inches, which is over getting up towards 400 millimeters of rain, which could occur in this area. Going back to the other view, there's two cameras active right now, at least from what I could find quickly before the stream started. And you can see light traffic here. There's a lot of lanes there, so I assume it's a very busy area usually. Very quiet. We have one car there just pulling up to the intersection in a rather lazy fashion. Hard to tell what, from a very high angle like this, just what's going on the ground there, how strong those winds are, but you can see a large amount of trees there on the right hand side, and some of them are rustling about, but on either of these cameras I've not seen anything too crazy yet. Just a few breezes. It is still 250 kilometers from the center of the storm, the center of Danang, so it's still got quite a way to get there. It's always been quite a small storm. Do you think, is it still small in terms of what we're used to, Soham?
Still pretty small. It's pretty small for South China Sea standards, especially after going past the Philippines.
So would we expect
It's
that?
rare enough itself. It's rare enough itself that the storm became a pinhole again after making landfall.
Yeah, indeed. Do you think that the winds will get up very quickly and possibly take people by surprise?
That is, if there's a direct eye wall hit on the city, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
Though if it misses, it'll probably more gradual pickup, gradual slowdown.
Yeah. In this case of like small type, once gradually pick up and then dropping in.
National Hurricane Centre will update on Ian very shortly, and we will of course take all the latest information on that. Our primary focus right now is Typhoon Noru as it gets closer and closer to the coast of Vietnam. Our Ian coverage will return in the same time slot as yesterday. We'll be doing a full 8 hours of phone in where we'll be taking your calls and looking at the latest on Ian. It's not a good situation as far as we can tell. Tyler says, we had a tornado warning in the Florida Keys twice last night and one touched the ground near me, they said. So certainly that possibility for substantial tornado activity around that whole southeastern part of Florida. Tropical Storm Altony Bronze says, is it possible for typhoons to stall? Of course it is.
I think we have had a few cases of stalling in the past. Yeah.
Hinamnor. Just a few weeks ago, Typhoon Hinamnor was driving people mad with its crazy track and forecast uncertainty.
One of the more strange tracks you will see.
Fan just drove past the camera there. It's still not looking too crazy. A little bit of surface water pooling on the left hand side. A few breezes. It is getting slightly breezier as I've been watching this stream here. But only small changes in this hour, and I've not seen a soul walking along the pavement, so everyone is very much indoors. A lot of light around this area, so clearly power is still in abundance. I don't think we'll see anything regarding power outages until quite a bit later on. And also just to note that traffic lights appear to still be in normal mode, you know, when they go to emergency mode or whatever, where they just flash amber all the time and there's no real rules of the road. You just have to give way to people. But they're still operating normally by the looks of things. There you can see a green light through that tree. So everyone seems to have made their preparations if they're all indoors. And we expect to see the worst conditions potentially pile through this area within the next 5 or 6 hours. We won't really be here to cover it, unfortunately, but I'm sure people know the drill with strong impacts regularly visiting the coast of Vietnam when we get these typhoons, quite a few in recent years, as I mentioned not so long ago. Let's see if we can get some more questions there. Do the models agree more now with the track of Ian? Right.
Yeah,
so
but Ian has our models have started locking in on Ian's overall what do we say, track guidance to be near or close to Tampa Bay. But here's the thing, I've already posted a live chat showing that Ian is already east of the easternmost models. So
really?
In the live output chat. So look.
Yeah, let's have a look at this here. This
Red dot you see at over the top of Cuba, that's Ian center. You can see it's east of even the blue line, or that is UKM.
Oh my
UKM2.
god.
As you can see that red dot at the bottom?
Yeah. If that continues, then this is going to be... Oh, man. You think then that it could continue moving further east and we could just be looking at it swiping through Florida and making landfall maybe somewhere near Naples?
It's a little dangerous to extrapolate just from short-term movements. So I would say hold on to the current forecast of moving through Tampa Bay area slowly,
But
but
surely the cone
slightly
will
more
shift
east than
eastwards a
expected
little bit, won't it, at the next update?
in the next update.
Yeah,
That much I guarantee.
yeah. National Hurricane Center's update will be out shortly. We will take that live, as well as any other news developing on Typhoon Noru. But still, this storm, winds of 115 miles per hour. Ian is the strongest storm now for the first time, with winds of 125 miles per hour and the pressure of 950 from the last National Hurricane Center update. So 2 Category 3s active at the same time and threatening land at the same time. It has happened, it does happen quite often during peak season, but it is pretty rough to try and cover 2 of these major events at the same time.
That too impacting land.
Yeah,
It's been a
divided
long time
attention
since
and
we
all that.
last had. It's been a long time since we last had simultaneous majors impacting land.
You can see
I don't recall when was the last time.
Oh,
I,
obviously one of
I
the
think it
big
was Faksai and
Oh, maybe. One of the biggest historic ones, though, was Typhoon Mangkhut and Hurricane Florence, which occurred simultaneously. Mangkhut was a Category 5 for a long time over the Philippine Sea, made a Category 5 landfall in the northern Philippine Islands, and of course Hurricane Florence peaked twice as a Category 4 and was and caused
stalling
major,
as it made landfall in the Carolinas.
yeah, stalling for ages in North Carolina and moving inland eventually. That was 2018. I'm sure there was stuff active at the same time as Dorian as well.
Yeah, Faksai was active with Dorian at the same time.
Was that the one? Right. That's the
Yeah.
one that blew
I
up
think it
real
was
quick near Japan, wasn't it?
yeah, it quickly intensified to like Category 4, 150 knots. But it was completely overshadowed by Dorian.
Yeah, some crazy times we've had in recent years. And this is just another one of those chapters. Start your message with Force 13 all in text whilst we're on the air here. We're mainly covering Noru whilst it's peak hours in Vietnam, coming up to 10 to 10 p.m. And the expected landfall will be in the morning hours, probably at around 5 or 6 a.m. We'll take a look in a minute at some of the models and a look around both areas that we're covering. In fact, let's go and do that now, just to show you what they're suggesting once again. So here we are with the GFS model looking at Florida, and look at this intensification, and there's the storm stalling along the coast. Where exactly is that?
We have
ahead.
a new cone. We have a new cone from the JTWC for Noru.
I think I already showed that one, I'm pretty sure I did. But we'll show it.
Is it the one with the 19 knots landfall?
Yes.
Then we have already seen it.
We'll show it again at the start of the next hour. But this GFS forecast calling for a landfall there, very close to Cape Coral on some of those islands offshore. And that would be pretty concerning because those are all pretty inhabited areas. And a very powerful landfall that would be. Still probably Category 3 there because GFS underestimates. And then look at that.
I think the last storm to landfall from this angle was Irma.
Yeah, but further
the West
south.
Coast. Yeah,
And then look at
this
this.
area in particular was hit. And this area in particular was last hit in 1921, I think.
Well, Charlie as well was hit right this area, I think.
Yeah, Charlie as well.
But then you look at that, stalling
But Tampa
for
Bay itself
ages.
was last hit in 1921.
Yep, stalling for ages and then moving up the coast, and that's crazy from the GFS. But if we check the ECMWF, I'm pretty sure it pretty much agrees, does it? Let's have a look here. Landfall a little bit further north there. It's was that exactly? That's near Sarasota landfall. Also very strong, and pretty much moving due north by the time it reaches the same level as Cape Coral. It then moves north to Sarasota and then into Tampa Bay and then stalling around there and northeast. So what you're waking up to this morning is that models have shifted quite a bit eastwards when we're looking at this. CMC, just to compare, look at that, much further west. But it's not as reliable as the other models. The Icon has always been an eastern outlier, and same again here, moving it straight through Port Charlotte and then off to the northeast and moving off the coast just north of Cape Canaveral, and then making another landfall as a hurricane on the Georgia-South Carolina border. That's the craziness of the Icon, but it could be the most accurate, maybe. NavGem, let's just have a little look here. Not as good resolution as you can see, but it's still calling for a northwesterly component after it passes Key West, and actually not making landfall at all, but still delivering massive surge to Tampa, and then off through the Bend area and Apalachicola and towards northern Alabama and Tennessee. That's the NavGem. Let's check the HWRF forecast for Ian. So this is the HWRF, and it is still calling for a much further north landfall, just north of the Tampa area, somewhere around Spring Hill. Or maybe not, no, actually more towards Palm Harbor. And that's just another strong landfall, category 4 landfall that is, oh my goodness. And then moving northeastwards and really expanding. HWRF is an aggressive model usually though, so that's just one viewpoint. And the HMON, let's see what that one is also showing. A landfall there not far from Sarasota, also as a category 4, and it actually peaks the storm as a category 5 at this point on approach to Florida. But that again is also an aggressive model, moving straight inland and then making landfall again in South Carolina. So a few different options on the table there, as we can quite clearly see, with what that storm might do. Those were actually 850 millibar heights, so no wonder it said category 5. It actually won't be a category 5 on the ground. But flight level category 5 there. So that's pretty much the summary there for the models right now on Ian. We'll quickly check the ones on Noru in just a short moment. Let's go to those now. I mean, there's not too much to tell you about what will happen to Noru now because its forecast is pretty much locked in. You can see how close it is to land. So let's have a look at that GFS again and just show us what we've been looking at recently. And there is those two storms, Noru and Kulap. Kulap, the one there, 987 towards the top right near Japan. That's moving harmlessly out to sea. Noru there making landfall pretty much right on top of, or just very south, just slightly south of Danang. Still moving inland, pretty much due west, and dissipates very quickly by Thursday. But it will deliver a lot of rain. Later on, that second system, GFS has really backed off it, and now it's just a low pressure moving through there, but would still deliver very heavy rainfall. See if we can check the Euro on this. Yep. European model calls for the storm to deviate a little bit further north, like what the JWC is forecasting. Landfall in Danang, and then a little jog southwards, and it dissipates quickly again. ECMWF also significantly developing that other system now that we actually deactivated this morning because we thought it wouldn't form now, near Okinawa.
That would be 97W, right?
Yeah, still a weak storm forecasted there, but one nonetheless. Let's check Icon on this as well. Icon is pretty much the same as ECMWF, landfall pretty much directly over Danang and forms 97W, becomes a tropical storm near the Amami Islands. And let's just look at CMC. Landfall south of Danang on that one, so it's with the GFS, although it jogs north after landfall. And then again, Okinawa, maybe a tropical depression forming there off Japan, and it's a bit, doesn't really know where to go there. So that's an idea of what we're looking at with all of those computer models right now. We're awaiting the National Hurricane Center's update on Hurricane Ian, and they're currently, before the update, they're giving it 125 miles an hour and a pressure of 950 millibars. The cone will change at the next advisory. It looks like it might shift eastwards, and Ian is looking pretty incredible on satellite imagery. Whilst we continue waiting for that, let's see if we can get some more questions. What do we think the likelihood is of Ian making landfall as a Category 4? I think the chance is increasing. If it continues to move further east, the forecast cone, which the models appear to be starting to advocate for, then we're looking at a stronger and sooner landfall in southern Florida, and it could be at Category 4 strength. It would be pretty crazy. But it is becoming a little bit more likely. All I could say about that is that if it does continue, and just show that last National Hurricane Center cone, if it does continue to deviate east and makes landfall south of Tampa, then at least Tampa Bay will be spared a lot of that storm surge, the most vulnerable area. But then you're looking at Port Charlotte and Punta Gorda and that bay, which could get the very worst conditions of this storm and be absolutely, devastated by enormous surge. Somewhere's going to have to get it by the looks of things. It's not going to be an easy next few days for some of these areas. It's just exactly where. The update is out on Ian right now, and they've changed some warnings. A storm surge warning has been issued for the US East Coast from Marineland, Florida to the mouth of St. Mary's River, including the St. Johns River and the Dry Tortugas. Along the Florida West Coast, a storm surge warning has been issued for from Suwannee River to Anclote River. A hurricane watch in effect for the west coast of Florida from south of Bonita Beach to Chokoloskee.
This is surprising.
A storm surge watch
I'd like to
issued for
quickly
the
point
mouth
out-
of St. Mary's River, the South Santee River. Tropical storm warning extended north to Altamaha Sound, Georgia, and south to Boca Raton, Florida. Tropical storm watch for south of Boca Raton to east of Flamingo for the upper Florida Keys and Florida Bay. Tropical storm watch in effect from north of Altamaha Sound to South Santee River. Tell us what's interesting.
Well, they downgraded the peak forecast for Ian from 140 to 130.
They've weakened the current intensity down to 115 miles per hour, which, looking at satellite imagery, I'm quite
What I'm
baffled
saying
about.
Is,
I know what you're saying.
What I'm saying
Yeah,
is that they reduce. Yeah.
they are
They actually
expecting
reduce the peak forecast.
a 130 mile per hour peak, though, still, shortly, as Category 4, but it was 125 miles per hour, and they've put it down to 115 at this update. So,
It's
interesting.
probably because of land interaction.
Yeah,
That's
interesting,
fine.
but
That happens.
I'm not sure I buy it. It looks amazing on satellite, but they must have recon in there, right?
Yeah, that coupled with the fact that it's just emerging off of Cuba, and land interaction always makes storms be weaker than they look. So
Well, a lot to discuss regarding Ian later on today. As I've mentioned a few times, we will be covering that a lot more later on our main coverage, our phone-in, which will begin at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. In the meantime, we are still mainly covering Typhoon Noru, which is at 115 miles per hour and 952. And for the time being, at least, Noru is back to being the strongest storm again, because Ian's pressure up to 963. So Noru is just about on the stronger side again as it approaches
it's probably
landfall.
temporary.
Oh yes, of course it's temporary. I've got to update loads of stuff on my bottom bar as well, so that's going to be a struggle. It's only me here who can update all of that stuff, so that's going to be fun as well.
Well, I do have good news. Kenneth will be joining us in the next hour, so next hour.
Excellent. We enjoy Kenneth's appearance.
because I need to eat my dinner now.
All right. We're going to go to a break then. We'll be back in a few moments with more information on Ian and Noru. We're mainly covering Noru right now as it approaches the coast of Vietnam. We'll be back after this. Our live coverage will continue in a moment. You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Hello and welcome to Force 13 Live. We're covering two major events right now. For the first few hours today, we're doing coverage mainly on Typhoon Noru, which is set to make landfall on Vietnam fairly soon. It will land fairly close to Danang, probably just south of there, but it's looking close, and it could possibly make a direct landfall in the next few hours overnight. It's just after 10 PM Vietnamese time this evening, and we are watching that one, but also a new update on Ian, and I think a new cone. Music cut off there, but never mind. Let's see if we can look at that new cone. And there it is from the 11 AM advisory. Updates to those warnings as well. And you can see there is it definitely is a shift eastward, and they are expecting the landfall to occur as a, how strong? High-end category 3 is what they're going with for the landfall intensity now. And they're expecting that landfall to occur near just south of Sarasota now is where they're expecting that landfall to occur. So big shifts in the cone overnight and into this morning, and now it would appear that we're going to have a landfall south of Tampa. The cone though is still fairly wide, and the storm center could still track anywhere from anywhere within that cone, which pretty much extends right now from south of Cape Coral and Fort Myers all the way up to pretty much Cedar Key. So, in fact, beyond there. So, really large cones still out there right now, and tropical storm watch is extended now all the way up to South Carolina. So that's the latest news on Ian. It is down slightly to 115 miles per hour, but they are expecting intensification again as it becomes stronger in the Gulf of Mexico. It's still going to be a massive impacting storm, but possibly a little bit of hope starting to emerge for Tampa Bay, because if the storm does make landfall south and east of there, then the storm surge impacts won't be anywhere near what it might have been. Still up in the air, with some models expecting a further westward movement, so a landfall on the north side of Tampa still can't be completely ruled out. A lot to talk about later on today, no doubt. But this is this is Typhoon Noru, and you want to ignore the bottom bar for a little while because I've still not managed to update it. It is just me here at the moment to try and update all of that stuff. I've just got to try and get back to the public advisory and write out the latest warnings, so you'll have to bear with me here for a moment, but I guess this is what happens. So, Tropical Storm Watch is the last bit that I'm just filling out here. North of Suwannee River to Indian Pass, Altamaha Sound to South Santee River, and other areas of Tropical Storm Watches. South of Boca Raton to Flamingo, east of Flamingo, and upper Florida Keys and Florida Bay. So I'm just updating all of that stuff. It's easier to read it out as I type it, but that is the latest Tropical Storm Watch. Just to reassert the new warnings that came in, changes to warnings, so I may as well just read out all of them now. So a hurricane warning for the Cuban provinces of Isla de Juventud, Pinar del Rio and Artemisa, Bonita Beach, Florida to Anclote River, including Tampa Bay, and the Dry Tortugas. I'm just going to export this file, so bear with me a moment whilst I get that running. And then you'll hear a few beeps going on here as well and clicks. Also, storm surge warning in Florida, as we take a look back at that imagery just for a moment. Really beautiful appearance of this storm as it leaves the coast of Cuba. Look at that. Storm surge warnings, Suwannee River southward to Flamingo, Tampa Bay, Dry Tortugas, marine land to the mouth of the St. Mary's River and St. John's River. Tropical storm warning for the Cuban provinces of La Habana, Mayabec and Matanzas, Suwannee River to the Anclote River, Flamingo to Bonita Beach, Lower and Middle Florida Keys, Boca Raton to Altamaha Sound, and Lake Okeechobee. A storm surge watch for the Florida Keys from the Card Sound Bridge westward to Key West, Florida Bay, the Osceola River to Suwannee River, the mouth of St. Mary's River to South Santee River, and south of Marineland to the Volusia-Flagler County line. Hurricane watch for north of Anclote River to Suwannee River and south of Bonita Beach to Chokoloskee. Tropical storm watch for north of Suwannee River to Indian Pass, north of Altamaha Sound to South Santee River, south of Boca Raton to the east of Flamingo, upper Florida Keys, and Florida Bay. They are now expecting 8 to 12 feet of storm surge from the middle of Longboat Key to Bonita Beach, including Charlotte Harbour. We'll be doing a lot more coverage on Ian later on in the afternoon. We'll be live with our Ian phone-in from 3 p.m. until 11 p.m. Eastern Time when we are back on the air. At the moment, we're doing a 3-hour stint, mainly looking at Typhoon Noru. Local time in Vietnam is just after 10 past 10 in the evening, and we'll be here until midnight. My name is Nathan Foy, back in the studio once again, here as always, and right now I think it's just, oh no, a few other people have joined since I last looked. So we're joined once again by Smitty, and we also have Ethan here for this hour of coverage. Hello to you two.
Hello.
Hello. Very worried about Ian.
It looks very menacing right now, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's particularly worrying for me because I have a lot of family which have luckily evacuated in the path of this. So that's some good news, but very worried about what Ian's going to do.
What do you make of Noru's progression in the last 12 hours?
Well, I know that Noru rapidly intensified up to pretty much a high-end Category 4 last night. Did the storm undergo a IRL prison cycle, by the way? Did that happen at all?
What happened was, well, yeah, actually, an eye wall replacement cycle which has been a bit botched because the northern eye wall is completely wide open right now.
Oh.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really some good news.
It is.
Because while, yes, that has broadened the wind field a lot, and while, yes, that has also made the impacts go farther out from the storm center, it has actually lessened them a little bit, because this storm, if it hadn't not undergo that IRL replacement cycle, it would have slammed into Vietnam as probably a high-end Category 4, if not a Category 5.
Ugh.
So Vietnam is incredibly lucky right now, because last night I was almost certain that we were going to be seeing a worst-case scenario with Noru. And luckily that has appeared to have changed, luckily.
We've got a couple of live webcams in Danang, and it's gotten a little bit windier at this location, but still we're not seeing really excessive breezes. As a matter of fact, when you look at the earlier, we could see droves of rain pattering on the floor. It looks like that's relented quite a bit, so it must be in a bit of a drier area of the storm. And looking at this high view, looking down on, I assume, one of the very major intersections in this city, you can still see a couple of vehicles around. We saw a lot of emergency vehicles in the last hour, but generally
Definitely gotten a lot breezier.
Yeah, generally it's very quiet, and a lot of people staying indoors quite clearly. There's another emergency vehicle there. I'm just trying to figure out exactly where this is. That might be a difficult task, but I'm sure any locals would know where this is in Danang City somewhere. I'm not sure whether that's the river in the background, just off the top of the screen. I think it might be. There's a river that runs through pretty much the middle of Danang on the eastern side, and quite a few tributaries that flow into that at very close proximities. So I imagine, just looking at the geography, I'm not sure how bad it is, but there must be some potential for significant flooding and storm surge in that region.
Yeah, how far is this webcam right now from the storm center?
This is approximately, in the last hour, it was about 250 kilometers from the center.
So not very far, and
No.
conditions really aren't that bad.
This is what I was thinking earlier. Is it the case of, like we saw before it struck the Philippines, a very small core, and that things might just get worse all of a sudden? Or
Yeah, the wind
Yeah,
field gradient's probably quite sharp.
I haven't had a look at microwave imagery, so I wouldn't be able to tell how really small this core is.
I think I've found the exact location of where this webcam is. It is, I don't know what it's mounted on, but it is looking out over the main river, looking east. So it's actually looking towards the center of the storm, along a road, or the bridge, I believe, looking out towards the top of the image there is Khao Rong, I think. So on the bottom right there, I think that's some kind of a museum or something to that effect. Lots of trees there down there on the right hand side that you can see that are swaying. But we're still not seeing really crazy winds or anything like that yet. Here's another view. For the first time, actually, you can see just a few little artifacts on the road there, so possibly some little bits, twigs and leaves falling on the ground. And it doesn't look as flooded as it did earlier. Earlier we saw a car moving into a little, looks like an alleyway or an entranceway there on the left-hand side of the screen. And the water was about a third of the way up the wheels, about half a foot deep. It certainly doesn't look like that now, so I think there's a little reprieve from rainfall in this location just at the moment. We also have a little bit of radar here from RainViewer. I know that Smitty, you had at various points some more local radar from Vietnam.
Yeah, I can pull it up if you want.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit better quality than what we have.
Although you can fix your quality by just unsmoothing it.
I can't see that option.
I'll tell you how to do it. So what you need to do, we go on RainViewer.
Let's not do it on the air, shall we? Come on.
It's easy though.
But show us your radar.
All right, I'll show you the unsmoothed radar. Give me a moment. Let me go to where that is. Here we go. Actually, I think the composite view is better because you get a bigger range. Full screen that. Share screen. There you go. That's what it looks like currently.
And if you've got any comments or questions for us whilst we're on the air, please let us know. Wow, that looks much better.
Let me get rid of the stupid forecast thing. Where is that? Maybe radar. No, that's not working. Anyway, here it is.
Alright, I fixed it.
No, so you got no smoothing now.
Yeah, I fixed it at my end.
Alright, awesome. I'll shut this down then.
Sorry about that. Let's bring it back here. So here is the non-smooth version. That looks a little bit more cleaner now, showing exactly where the center of the storm is. And what you can also see on this radar imagery, Ethan, is supporting what we saw on microwave earlier. Hardly anything there on the northern side.
Yeah, the core is collapsing on Noru, which will probably promote further weakening. But this hurricane, typhoon.
It's going to be one of those days, I think.
Yeah, it is. But it is weakening right now, as it is dealing with still some westerly wind shear, and that's probably going to disrupt the core a little bit. So probably further weakening as it heads into Vietnam. I don't want people in Vietnam to think, oh, the storm is weakening, that means that the impacts are going to lessen. No, that is not the case at all. Because heavy rainfall, strong winds, storm surge, and potentially even some landslides or some mudslides could also result from this.
Yep, we keep looking at the views here on the ground, and it has gotten a little bit breezier here, and you can see some of those trees flapping around in the distance, more than I've seen so far. So that location getting breezier. Looking back at this higher point as well, it'll definitely be telling if we ever start to see this camera rattling given its high position. I think that might start happening at some point. But very quiet roads out there, so that's good to see. It isn't that late in the night, it's 20 past 10, but very few vehicles. So people must be all hunkered down and getting ready for this storm, which could strike this area with over 160 km/h sustained winds and possibly higher in a worst case scenario. But for the time being, Noru is once again the stronger storm out of the two. Ian earlier 125 miles per hour from the National Hurricane Center. They've dropped it to 115 as it leaves the coast of Cuba, and a pressure of 963, and they're expecting a 130 mile an hour peak. What was that?
I don't know why the NHC have dropped it down to 130 when
115, yeah. Me neither.
There's actually eyewall lightning in Ian right now.
Oh,
A
man.
lot of it, actually.
Oh boy.
I don't know what that signifies. Probably strengthening.
Yep, usually is strengthening. But a big shift in that forecast cone once again, taking it much further east. But it shows now, Ethan, that east of Tampa Bay possibly landfall, so somewhat of a reprieve for Tampa Bay regarding storm surge maybe.
I mean, it might make things better for Tampa, but it honestly makes things worse for Charlotte Harbor.
Oh, I know.
And
yep.
And Charlotte Harbor is probably a more storm surge prone area than Tampa Bay is probably, because
Is
we
it?
saw how. I mean, I don't really know, but I'm not really familiar with my Florida topography in this area. But both of those areas are bays, and
Yep.
with the onward flow that this hurricane is going to be promoting, that's going to cause a lot of issues, and
Yeah, it's
the
gonna be a
water will
nightmare.
basically get pushed into that area and
If
won't
I
have
were
anywhere
to
to go.
interject,
Sorry?
if I were to interject, it also depends a lot on how the storm makes landfall. The worst case scenario would be the storm making landfall just west of Tampa Bay, because then that would mean the what do we say, the eye wall, or the eye wall strongest at the northeast side or northeast quadrant typically. So the strongest winds would be funneling straight into Tampa Bay. So the highest surge would occur when the storm landfalls just west of Tampa Bay.
Man,
The route.
Pinellas County. Let's see if we can get some comments and questions on either of these storms right now. We're trying to cover them as much as possible. Well, there's our YouTube page. All the comments are on the right hand side of there, and that's where I'm looking. I want to give you a small panel. It shows a lot for the view count and all that, and it makes me look like I'm only looking at that, but the chat is over there as well in a big panel on the right hand side, and it flows through. Let's get some comments then. If Ian dips into the Atlantic Ocean again, then what are the chances that Ian slams the Carolina coast? A few models starting to pick up on this possibility that it could be maybe a Category 1 landfall for South Carolina.
Yeah, I've been actually noticing that too. So maybe that could happen, but it's not set in stone. I can actually check the models that are doing that right now, and I can quickly show you the effects of that. Probably
Yeah.
something tornadic, because it's North Carolina plus hurricane.
We were looking at those models a little while ago. We'll look again soon. Any possible lightning in Noru? Question mark.
Probably there probably is a little bit, but I'm not entirely sure on that.
Not as much as Ian, most likely.
Yeah, Ian is.
Well, you typically see lightning in more intensifying cyclones.
And will Noru re-emerge in the Bay of Bengal? Some
Too early to tell.
Oh, this is an interesting question.
we can't
because
say flat out no
some
anymore.
models had it doing that.
Yeah, we can't flat out say no anymore, which I thought we would be able to, but one or two models picking up on a little low pressure signature emerging suspiciously a few days after this storm makes landfall.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Macmo Bullbull situation.
Oh,
if it were to pan out that way.
Don't say
Maximum bowl situation? What did you say?
that. No, Matmo Bulbul, two storm names that were active
Oh, I don't know. Okay, sorry, my
a
bad.
couple of years ago. But yeah, it did sound like... anyway, would Typhoon Noru rapidly weaken after landfall in Vietnam? Well,
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
generally what happens. Yeah.
models all have rapid dissipation by 48 hours, I think.
Yeah, land
all
interaction
of
is
them,
going.
again.
Given how disrupted this core is, it's Vietnam will only speed up that process.
Tate says, will Ian rapidly intensify? Also, it looks a bit like Laura.
Will Ian do what? Sorry.
Rapidly intensify.
Probably.
Yeah, most likely.
Looking very likely at this point.
Let's look at some more images of Ian right now. Look at that.
There's a rather significant window of like 24 hours before the upper level trough completely stops shearing Ian as it makes landfall. So there's a chance of quick intensification in that small window.
I just don't get it how the NHC
Right.
have dropped Ian down to 115 miles per hour, yet Cuba ended up helping the eye clear, and the cloud tops are
Somehow, yeah. Look at the eye. It's very well defined now.
pretty similarly
There's
organized.
actually a good reason why this happens sometimes. You see, land friction is a lot more detrimental to the storm than you think. So it generally tends to slow down winds faster, and it often leads to storms looking stronger than they actually are. Though give it 6 to 12 hours, it'll catch up in strength again after land interaction ends.
Oh, joy. We're also joined by Tim Ringo. Hello, Tim.
Good afternoon, Nathan.
Good morning over there in North Carolina. And which system would you like to pick up on first? We've got two major cyclones that are both about to affect land.
Probably Noru is going to be the biggest threat right now. Obviously, moving into Vietnam, local time there, and obviously we have Ian moving off the coast of Cuba, start to intensify. We do actually have recon in Ian right now. It's an AF-302. They've made a couple passes as it's come off of the coast of Cuba. They're getting ready to make another northwest pass. So once that pass happens, we'll have that information for you.
Any information about winds and pressure from recon? Is it them that caused? Is it their observations that pulled that intensity down a little bit?
Taking a look at the raw data, they did have one center fix, which was 963 that they got. Most of the flight data has indicated that winds have been a little bit lower. Peak flight level was 76 knots, but that may have been on the northern side before Ian properly got offshore Cuba. Now that the eye is back over open water, I am really interested to see what this next recon pass gets for their readings.
So we're looking and talking about two things at once here. We're looking at the radar imagery of Typhoon Noru as it gets closer and closer to the coast of Vietnam. Let me just get a quick position estimate right now, if I can, on where it currently is, and I can't yet. That'll take me a little while.
Honestly, not a fan of. I'm looking at the public server chat, and I'm looking at a lot of people living in the Florida area whose parents are rather unwilling to evacuate, which is quite frankly dangerous. People would take the storm more seriously. I get the feeling that people are not taking Ian as seriously as they should. That's unfortunate.
Some position estimates then for Noru right now. It's approximately 163 kilometers from Quang Ngai, 177 from Tam Ki, 187 from Hoi An, and 200 kilometers now from Danang. So 200 kilometers. So it's gotten much closer in the last hour. It was around 250 kilometers at my last check, although I'm just inferring from satellite, and it's quite difficult to get a center fix. But certainly in that ballpark, and for a storm that's only 100 and what's that in miles? about 120, 130 miles away, conditions still look fairly calm, all things considered, in Danang. Looking once
Yeah,
again.
but, I mean, the core of this thing has to be small. There's no way it isn't. Because
It at least doubled in size when that eyewall replacement cycle happened, although having said that, it was a pinhole.
I got an answer to that North Carolina question. Okay, so if I look at like the okay, should I share my screen so I can display what
Sure.
I'm seeing? All right. Right, so we're using the GFS. I know it's not the model that's showing it recurving into North Carolina. However, this does display a good point. So if we look at storm relative helicity, that's just how much spin there is in the atmosphere. You can see basically as Ian dissipates, you have an extremely large swath of SRH and very high values. However, there's no instability, so you can't really get tornadoes without at least a bit of instability. I know North Carolina is sort of like infamous for hurricane tornado outbreaks with like barely any instability, but if I get a sounding here, right? Don't worry about all of this. Just look, you can literally see here, right? There's 0 surface-based cape. But potentially, if the timing and everything aligns, we could have at least a bit of surface-based cape in North Carolina or South Carolina and Georgia. They're not out of the woods, and then maybe we could see a couple post-tropical tornadoes, which is kind of a theme for this area anyway. So that's my analysis, I guess.
Tim, would you concur?
It's very possible. The other ingredients that would be needed is obviously the helicity would be there, but you'd need some decent wind shear and some other moisture and instability to help spin up some tornadoes post landfall.
The wind shear is definitely there, though. It's just there's
the wind shear
no
is there. It's just
instability.
you got to have the feel for it. I mean, if you take a look at Ida last year, granted it made was it last year, Ida?
Yep. I know it feels like longer.
Okay. Yeah, it does. But yeah, if you look at Ida, even though it made landfall down in New Orleans, once it got up towards upstate New York, around New Jersey and all that, it just happened that the ingredients fell in for a tornado outbreak up through there. The energy was there, the instability, the wind shear, everything lined up for it.
Well, here's the thing about North Carolina and surrounding areas. Especially North Carolina, are very infamous for high shear, low cape outbreaks. So basically, you can have barely any SB cape, like 100, which is considered really low. However, because the shear is so high, it basically spins the storms like a top, and you still get intense tornadoes that way. But right now, the model's just saying there's 0, and you literally physically can't have a tornado with 0 SB cape. So we'll see. We'll monitor it. It might change as timing of the storm's landfall and stuff changes. But for now, I'm not seeing much. Because if I look at the instability right now, you can see it's sort of this would load a bit faster. There you go. Yeah, there's a bit of cape here. But if I cross-reference that with the helicity, it's just coastal. It's like the hurricane dragging the moisture and instability from the coast.
But you see that quite a lot, don't you? When you get tornado signatures floating towards the coast, and they just pretty much collapse when they move inland.
Not always. I've definitely seen some North Carolina
no.
tornado that goes just through land and don't care. Because if they're tornadic waterspouts, they won't care whenever they get to land.
Yeah, we saw that
mainly happening is sea breeze in the Great Lakes. Yeah, as you can see, the SRH isn't really matching with the cape. But if the cape can move further inland to around this area, then yeah, we could definitely see some tornadoes. And
we
obviously
saw
flooding and
that
everything.
with Hurricane Isaias, where while Isaias went through the Wilmington area, we did have a few water spots that came from the Outer Bands and came on shore and were actual legitimate tornado threats. One of them actually delivering EF3 damage to a town west of Wilmington. So it doesn't really matter if the hurricane landfalls directly. Those outer bands are just as dangerous as the eye itself.
You had a few during Florence as well, didn't you?
We did, but not really around this area. The tornado threat was actually more up in Virginia and Pennsylvania when it started moving north into that area.
All right, we're looking at a dual panel here of both storms currently active, Typhoon Noru and Hurricane Ian, both Category 3 storms, but both look completely different. But honest, they are the same strength and almost the same intensity. Noru is actually slightly stronger based on latest data, although it is getting rather close to the coast of Vietnam and is on the way down, and Ian is on the way up after just leaving the coast of Cuba. We'll continue to take questions on both of these storms. We're trying to highlight Noru today, well, not today, but for these next few hours up until midnight Vietnamese time, and then we will focus a lot more on Ian with another 8-hour marathon phone-in from 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Ali Egg, thank you very much for your support this morning. Says, could Ian ride the coast and affect Pennsylvania?
Yes, its remnants could, but I wouldn't count on that personally because that's way too far out. But
You're
if you're in
talking
Pennsylvania,
8-9 days out for that kind of prediction.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Don't know if it's 8 days anymore. It might be 6 or 7.
yeah, but if you're in Pennsylvania, just continue to monitor the situation as you're not really going to get anything that's terribly bad over there. You might get some gusty winds, but I don't think the thing is going to be too bad over there.
Let's get a few more questions. If you were to estimate the intensity of Ian based on its satellite appearance, what wind speed would you say it has right now? I made a tweet this morning, and just when I was waking up, and the storm was along the coast, just having made landfall in Cuba, and I compared it with a similar image from RAM of Gustav in 2008. And I think Ian actually looked better than Gustav at landfall, and Gustav had winds of 155 miles an hour. Just goes to show how it can still look much better, but it wasn't as strong because ground observations trump all. And that once again shows you those discrepancies you can have in satellite imagery, and goodness knows how strong some of these storms out to sea were actually, compared to what we estimated them on the satellite imagery, because that's the only tool we have.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that we don't
Yeah.
have recon for a lot more storms.
Probably reminds me of that classic case of Jangmi 2008, where it looked barely T7.0, and yet a recon found 160 knot, 155, I think, 160 knot winds. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it was pretty much stronger than satellite imagery.
And of course, during this whole event, we have live floaters, basically you could call them, live streams on both of these storms, 24/7 satellite imagery without commentary, but you'll be able to see both of these storms on our other streams on the Force 13 channel. And Tim, on the US channel, there's something going on, isn't there?
Yeah, we are actually running an automated stream with rapid scan and live radar from Key West. So we're covering this on all angles on all of the Force 13 family networks.
Yep, so on Force 13 US, we're there as well. Start your message with Force 13 all in text for comments and questions here, and we'll pick them up. We've not actually. James says reports of waterspouts in South Florida.
There have been a few.
And our chat mod, A Moment of Lovely, says, have we been surprised that Noru reached super typhoon status again?
I was shocked about it, yeah.
No. Honestly, no. The moment it became a pinhole, I had a feeling it would do that.
I'm going to say no because when we were looking at Noru just as it was leaving the Philippines, the Joint Typhoon Warning Center did hint at a Category 4 peak. Obviously, the South China Sea has been pretty well untapped so far this year. So it getting back up to super typhoon status seems really reasonable when you look at all the variables.
And Tropical Storm Alton Ebron says, how big is Hurricane Ian now compared to yesterday?
I'm not
It
sure.
depends
good
if you're
question.
In terms of
talking just
size or
CDO.
strength?
Yeah, it really depends if you're just talking like the CDO that we're seeing on screen, or if we're talking the total cloud influence.
Or the
Or
actual
we
wind
could also be
field?
talking about the wind field.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. Ooh.
I'll have a little look at the, because they, of course, the NHC have that wind history chart, don't they?
I think they do.
And
Yeah.
it's ballooned up quite a bit, actually. Let me see if I can show this on my screen. And just to show you here what has happened to the wind field. Where's the button? There it is. So there's the change in the wind field there. Between what it was before landfall and what it was after landfall. The tropical storm wind field has ballooned quite a bit. The hurricane wind field has stayed pretty much the same, but certainly compared to when it was passing the Cayman Islands, it has grown quite a lot.
Another plane's taking off for Ian right now from Keesler Air Force Base, I want to say. Yeah, Keesler Air Force Base.
Yeah, that would be
Speaking of-
Biloxi. AF308 is getting ready to take off for Ian, and we still have AF302 in there, getting ready to make that northwest to southeast pass. I am really interested to see what they find on this pass.
I
Speaking of Ian-
think they'll barely be able to make a southeast pass, Tim, because Cuba's there. I don't think they can overfly Cuba.
Well, they're not going to be able to make the full southeast pass, but they're going to at least be able to hit the center and maybe dart out the northeast. Either way, we're still going to get a really good look at the eye pressure and the winds on that northeast side.
Speaking of Ian, we have a couple supercells heading into the Miami metro, all of them with rotation. We'll have to see if they produce
Oh
anything.
man. Can we not?
Yeah, there's 3 of them I can see right now with pronounced hook echoes. And a bit of rotation and velocity.
What is Ian's total cloud coverage? Question there. I would imagine it's quite large. I've not even had a chance to look at it myself.
I can measure it right now.
Go on then. I'll see if I can get a wide shot whilst we wait on that. Trying to get one that covers the whole storm, but that's tricky. Nope, I haven't got one.
Well, it's over 1,000 miles, so...
Have we looked at rain totals yet?
on the models or live?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure quite a few inches would have fallen yesterday in Miami-Dade and a few other areas around there that were getting street flooding due to heavy rainfall. This is going to be a... And by the way, I mean, maybe they are talking about the model forecast, because that last GFS model run called for 45 inches of rain over land near wherever it was, Sarasota, I think, or somewhere.
Well, that would be more than crippling.
Oh, it would be just outrageous. The rain totals that are on the possible forecast are pretty terrifying, really. Let's see if we can look back at the webcams in Vietnam, and it's actually looking pretty quiet there now as we look at this imagery. Trees still a little bit windy, but earlier on we were seeing really piles of rain falling, but there's very little of it right now. You can't see anything bouncing off the ground really. You might see one or two little wind bits sweeping across, but it's breezy. And let's check back the other camera, looking down near central Danang, near the river, and still looking fairly calm there as well. Clearly still raining, but just a few breezes so far. I'm not seeing anything significant. That's how it looks in eastern coastal Vietnam right now, in Danang, which could get the center of the storm or very close to that from Typhoon Noru. It's currently 200 kilometers from the eye of the storm. And back to that radar imagery from Vietnam showing you how it's looking there. Storm continuing to progress westwards, and maybe a slight west-northwestward turn there in those latest frames. Some models are banking on that, others aren't. If it continues due west, it will pass south of Danang, and you'll get the much weaker northern eye wall, which is hardly there at all. But if the JWC is correct, along with the ECMWF model, then it is calling for a direct landfall over the city of Danang.
Yeah, a bit of an interesting development in regards to Ian. We do have a special marine warning that has just been issued to the southwest of the Miami-Dade area for a cell that will be coming into the Miami area. 34 knot winds and a waterspout is possible. So we'll be keeping an eye on this as this does move into the Miami area. Hopefully this does not come on shore and become a tornado.
Fingers crossed.
Rain Swish, thank you very much for your support and wants to join our team about what's going on in Florida. If you join us at the phone-in section after 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll get you on the air to talk about all the latest going on there. But for the time being, just let us know if you've got any comments there in the text, but we will get you on the air after 3 p.m. This is Force 13 Live. Keep your questions coming in. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. We're mainly covering Typhoon Noru at the moment because it's still the sort of the time of day that most people will be wanting to get information on the storm. Hurricane Ian, of course, we're not forgetting about that this morning. A powerful Category 3 storm. And if you look at them two side by side, Ian looks miles better, but despite that, they're at the same strength. And Noru possibly slightly stronger still, only for a little bit longer before it starts to weaken further as it gets closer to the coast of Vietnam. We heard about Recon not long ago, getting out towards the storm Ian once again. And with Noru, we don't really have so much in the way of observations, just looking at satellite imagery predominantly. If we bring this view up, I'm just waiting for here, you'll be able to see another viewpoint from Noru on the infrared satellite imagery. We don't have that just yet. Whilst we wait for that, there once again is the JTWC cone, and they have initialized this storm at 120 miles per hour still, and call for a landfall over Danang at 105 miles per hour, which is Category 2, 170 kilometers per hour sustained, and to move inland and be dissipating by Thursday evening. So that is what we expect from that forecast there on the JTWC. Interestingly, they still have a pretty strong northern semicircle, despite a big collapse in the eye wall. But surely...
Is that of the storm force wind fields or the typhoon force ones?
All. Yeah.
What?
Typhoon wind field is still quite small, as you see it on this graphic here, according to their forecast. But yeah, definitely the tropical storm force wind field stays quite active, and all the way up the coast there, as far as, forgot what location we were looking at up there, towards Dong Hoi, and beyond actually, towards Vinh, potentially getting tropical storm force winds. We've got no updates from NHC or the JTWC anytime soon, so we're mainly just looking and relying upon our own observations and conversation here as we move along. And there you can see on Typhoon Noru once again that other kind of infrared imagery showing some decent cloud tops blowing up in those later frames, either side of where the center might be. Interesting appearance there. Blowing up two banks of convection, east and west, which are ballooning well into the minus 80s, and some areas not far from minus 90 there in those cloud tops. So still pushing along And maybe that's a sign of a collapsed eye, Ethan, because usually when that happens, you can get lots of convection blowing up.
Maybe.
Let's get some more comments. A Moment of Lovely says, what is the size of Ian's eye and its temperature?
Oh, I have no idea. You'd have to measure it by radar. I know that Tim has radar up, but I don't know.
I do. Let me see what we can find out for that eye.
And I don't know either, so I can't help you there.
Of course, you want to measure it from its widest point to its widest point.
Gotcha.
HyperX Nick says, Sang Sein in 2006 also devastated central Vietnam back in the day, and now Noru is about to remake history, so my question is, which is worse, Sang Sein or Noru?
We won't be able to know until after the storm makes itself known and causes all that damage. We won't know.
We can give you an answer on paper. If we look at... I'm just going to load up Sang Sein's information. You said yesterday, Ethan, that you thought it made landfall as a Category 2. Let me just find out. Where is it? Yeah, Category 2 landfall. Made landfall with winds of 100 miles an hour. So it weakened quite a bit. In its position where Noru is right now, it was about 110 miles per hour. So they're quite close in intensity, but that doesn't tell you the whole story. Obviously size matters too, so I'm just going to hop onto another source and see how large it was compared to Noru. I imagine Sang Sein would have been a bit larger.
And you also have to not even forget that Sang Sein went from basically nothing to a high-end Cat 4 in 2 days before the Philippines. So both of these storms have pretty strong analogs. Both went from nothing to peak intensity, their strongest peak, before the Philippines in 2 days, and both went on and re-intensified up to Cat 4 prior to making landfall in Vietnam. So maybe Sang Sein's a strong analog here.
Interesting. I wonder if I can have a look at it, what it looked like on satellite imagery near its landfall. I'm just looking at some other images here. Oh, well, that's not very helpful. It says no data. Oh, here we go. Here is a visible image of what Sang Sein looked like before it made landfall in Vietnam. That's what it looked like. So when you look at it and compare it to Noru, yeah, that is quite similar. Looks like Sang Sein's eye was a little bit better defined. Which is interesting considering that Noru is a bit stronger than it, but I would imagine that wind field is fairly similar.
I'd have to imagine that probably Noru is weaker than a Cat 3 by now.
Well, the right person for the question has joined us, Kenneth, one of our top cyclone analysts. What's your thought on Noru right now?
So, there are two things that recently that really weak Noru. The first of all is very high shear. The shear is drastically increased to 20 to 30 knots right now, which is really destructive. Especially Noru has a very small core, which is with a combination of replacement cycle and shear, the core just completely eroded. Afternoon and evening, the core just completely eroded, and you can see the eye is just disappeared completely, and the convection blob just barely robbed because of shear. You can still see very cool convection, but it's already pretty messy, to be honest, which makes it it is as a 12Z estimate that I put it in 100 knots with 150 miles per hour. But right now the downtrend should be still continuing, and pretty much we'll be seeing further drop in the intensity estimate in the next synoptic point, which is 18Z. But personally, if you have to ask me for an instantaneous estimate, well, Category 2 is a reasonable estimate, I must say, considering the continuing deterioration and no satellite estimates supporting Category 3 anymore.
Lots of rain falling now in Danang, and you can see on these images, if I spy correctly, I think you can see the trails across the main road there of rain being blown across the road. That's quite fascinating to watch, if that is what I think it is. So some substantial winds currently occurring there. Still don't look crazy, but lots of rain falling at that location now, and you can see a car just up there at the top of the image moving across that bridge over the major river there, and some fascinating views from Danang right now. Visibility is down quite a bit. You can barely see into the distance over there. You can tell it's a bit fogged up over there, and you can see all of that rain smattering across the ground. When you look at those trees, the winds still aren't crazy, and there's a motorcycle moving along, but obviously another wave of strong, possibly a band or a squall moving through there right now. This is Force 13 Live. We are covering mainly Typhoon Noru this evening, local time. We will be doing a lot more coverage on Ian later this afternoon, local time in the US. We'll be starting an 8-hour-long phone-in show once again from 3 p.m. Eastern until 11. But now we're going to take a short break here at the end of this hour. We'll be running for one more hour until midnight Vietnamese time, by which point most people should be tucked away and hopefully hunkered down. But still, when we look at this imagery, more substantial rainfall over in that area right now, really blowing along, and you can see those trees really shaking a lot more now in the distance there, those higher trees, I suppose. So yep, quite a gnarly little band that's moving through that area now. And I think the camera's rocking a bit as well. So, two big situations that are currently unfolding. Typhoon Noru, probably going down to a Category 2 now, but still very close to Vietnam and set to make landfall in a few hours. And Hurricane Ian, which has emerged off the coast of Cuba, looks really impressive on satellite imagery, and yet only 115 miles per hour from the National Hurricane Center and 963 millibars. I'm sure Kenneth will tell us more about that reasoning in the next hour. But two massive situations and potentially a worst case scenario verifying for some parts of Florida. We're still not sure exactly where it's going to go, but the latest forecast cone now takes it south of Tampa Bay and potentially a landfall near Sarasota. Still, that cone is dynamically changing and more eastward shifts could still happen, but at the moment it's now looking particularly grim for the Port Charlotte area. So those are the areas we're concerned about now mostly, but the whole of Florida is still under real threat from Hurricane Ian. Well, we're going to take a short break here. We'll be back with more coverage on both of these storms after this short break. Stay tuned. Live coverage will continue in a moment. You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Welcome to our third hour of coverage this evening on Typhoon Noru predominantly, with one big eye on Hurricane Ian as well. Here's both of the storms presented in front of us. Both of them have winds of 115 miles per hour according to the latest estimates, although we've been reliably informed by our analyst team that Noru is probably no longer as strong as that, but will still deliver substantial typhoon conditions to parts of Vietnam, particularly in the Danang region, which we're watching very closely on webcams right now. In fact, if I was to bring us to it, we can take a look right now. There it is. There's some very strong gusts that I've seen on this camera now in the distance on some of those trees, as well as heavy rainfall. And actually, I think in the distance now, I remarked an hour or two ago that the traffic lights were still running normally, and now I can see them blinking amber, so that is a sure sign that a storm is here. They always do that in these cities usually, because it's just, I guess it's just no point having them running normally. Look at that, real breezy winds there, more than breeze, strong winds blowing through. And you can see some tree shadows as well that are just really getting along the street there, just blown across. I'm trying to figure out where that is, but probably on the left hand side of the road, obscured. It looks to me as though this actual camera site is in a little bit of a sheltered spot on that street, and the area that's a bit more well lit in the distance is much more open as far as I can tell, with some shadows moving right across the road there and the side of the road with those strong winds. Anyway, that's enough speculation about that webcam. My name is Nathan Foy here in the studio, and I'm joined by my team this hour. We have a few regular faces with us. We have Tim, Ethan, Kenneth, Taniel, and Walter. Hello to all of you this evening. Or morning. Of course, we're covering two separate sides of the world.
Good afternoon, Nathan. We actually do have some news in regards to Noru. These just came in off of our newswire. Island of Hainan and Paracel Islands now under blue and yellow typhoon warnings. And it looks like the Vietnam Met Service has raised red wind warnings and orange wind warnings. Probably going to butcher the pronunciation of these locations, so I do apologize ahead of time. Red wind warnings for Thurathine, Da Nang, Quang Nam, Quang Ngai, Bin Din, and orange wind warnings for Quang Bin, Dong Ha, Kon Tum, Gia Lai, and Phu Yen. So those are some of the newest warnings out of Vietnam, Hainan, and the Paracel Islands.
Unfortunately, we don't have any, I don't think we have any Vietnamese speakers on our team. I know we have a moderator in our public server in Vietnam, and I don't know if it was confirmed that they are in this storm properly or somewhere near it.
I think he's in Ho Chi Minh.
Oh, that's way further south, but they could still get up to 5 inches of rain down there in Ho Chi Minh City, possibly 125 millimeters. So, Walter, what are your thoughts on Noru right now then?
Noru? What is quite consistent considering it like hit Philippines in like a day or two ago. Then it decided to like pass through the entire South China Sea in like 2 days, still keeping the quite a significant intensity, I'd say.
We have a special update from NHC. They've issued a tropical cyclone update on Ian. They are initiating hourly fixes on Ian, given that it is within the Key West radar range.
Yep. Also, I should quickly mention something about Ian's eye wall. I'm picking up on at least the software, my radar, lightning strikes in the eye wall.
There is a lot of lightning in the eye wall right now.
Which that means that's an intense eye wall.
It's bad.
That's a bad sign.
Its appearance right now, when you look at it, is
I looked at like
Category
I
4
just
plus.
yeah. It looks at least Cat 4. I wouldn't be surprised if it briefly reached Cat 5.
We know it isn't at the moment, though, of course, from recon passes, but it has got
Yeah.
some time here. Tim, what were you looking at just then? Some cells?
I was actually looking at a couple cells up by the Miami area. There is a special marine warning in effect for those cells. But what I was really noticing, Nathan, and we've seen this with most of the hurricanes, this darker orange on radar, that is indicative of where we would be seeing the strongest winds within Ian right now. Obviously, recon is in the plane. They actually went through. Oh, they're not just in the plane; they're in the storm. There's a blooper for you. But their last pass had them coming through the northwest and out the east, so they didn't sample this northern side when they went through. But the eastern side, they did get right around 100 knot flight level winds. Dropson would indicate 962 with a 41 knot wind. However, that looks like, according to their notes, that went through the northwestern eyewall with that dropson. So they did not quite get the center with that dropson.
Yeah, but that also means a 958 millibar central pressure, which we're in a quite significant re-deepening again for that.
Oh boy. We're happy to take questions on the air for this final hour of our coverage at the moment. Then we're taking a 2-hour break on the channel and doing our 8-hour-long phone-in.
Oh, I thought you're covering Noru's landfall.
It's going to be a tough one. We've got to take a couple of hours off before we come back on the air.
Rest is important. Yeah, I know that.
But the cloud tops, after they really blew up on Noru on the left-hand side of the screen there, just starting to decay a little bit again. Let's take some questions. Did Ian jog east, says Sandy, and Ernie with that as well says, I noticed Ian started moving more east now and looks like... Pardon me, I knew that was coming. I couldn't do anything. And it looks like it's going to hit the Keys and possibly the Everglades. What is up with that?
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily the Keys, but it has made a little wobble towards the east, at least. Definitely a little more southern than Tampa is being now the expected target of landfall now. But still pretty close to Tampa nonetheless.
You can see on satellite it has moved from northerly movement to like northeast a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is moving towards. It's moving more east, probably a little bit.
At that rate, it might hit
30 degrees.
At the current rate, if it keeps on that trajectory, it will hit anywhere from Fort Myers or Port Charlotte. Somewhere around that threshold.
Man.
If it keeps on that trajectory, so it could also realign and still keep going north. Which it just could be a wobble right now.
Wobble is maybe it was a wobble, yeah.
Back to a live view
like
from Danang at this moment in time, and heavy rainfall and a few strong gusts that we've seen on this camera. You see those shadows menacingly flailing about in the distance across the other end of the road.
Nathan, you really want to see like good live cams? I have a here on my screen share.
All right, let's see what you're showing us.
This stream is flickering between different cams, but some cams are showing the real power of this.
That's quite a high mounted camera on the coast there. Was that a lightning
Probably
flash?
up. Oh no. They're probably on a building, obviously, higher up. But you can see surge there.
Because I've seen little flashes on multiple cameras now. I think there's lightning in this storm.
Probably. Wouldn't be surprising with those convection bursts. but definitely getting windy. On some of the other cameras, it was literally like you couldn't even see, just rain flying everywhere. We'll probably see that when they switch to another camera. I would stay on this though, so it will show us.
Yeah, feel free
But
to leave
you
that
can
there.
see the you can see the true shake in the camera. So.
Of course, the camera being at a little bit of an altitude, probably a bit windier up there than it is on the ground. Of course, we have all those little factors. But if you've got any comments or questions for us right now, please let us know. A few comments coming in as well from people over there in Vietnam, and one saying that is Pham Van Dong Beach. So I'm sure local people will know where that is, but I sure as hell don't, I'm afraid.
Me either.
Now that
All I
is
know
a
is
look.
it's...
That looks like central Danang, looking out maybe east across one of the major bridges going over the major river through Danang.
Yep.
So that area, I imagine, is quite exposed to.
Not severely windy. There has been a few gusts that look up to the. Here is what I'm talking about. One of these cams.
Can't even see
where
what's
it's
going
really...
on.
Yeah.
And there's another view. Rain barraging the camera there. There's a road that looks like it's possibly got a bit of standing water. It's hard to tell. Certainly wet conditions at the very least.
Just waiting for that one cam I saw. I don't know if they're gonna go back to it, but the cam that I saw, the winds were really like typhoon force.
Wow.
Looking. So. There's that cam.
Yeah, that's the camera that we had just a moment ago.
Yeah. Definitely will flicker through multiple cameras though, which is good.
Yeah, there's a lot to see, isn't there?
Yep. Well, I'm still over here just monitoring Ian's eye wall.
So, we reckon then that Noru might have weakened to a Category 2, according to some of our team. Someone was asking there what would the peak winds be before landfall.
High in Cat 2?
Sounds like it.
Like 110?
About 110 miles per hour,
05,
maybe.
110.
And that is about 175 kilometers per hour.
Still very strong nonetheless.
Just
Still
wondering-
not recommended to go out in this.
You can see all of that.
Surge.
Yeah, there is a surge, but also the
Ooh,
water
the
blowing
rain is
across.
coming. Rain is coming down a lot heavier since the visibility just dropped.
Also, I found weather reports in Danang International. The winds were 28 knots, gusting 38, and the pressure was 993. So
Here's the cam that I was looking at earlier. They
Ah.
had gusts up to typhoon force.
And just
We're
to
in
point
this
out,
area.
the airport is on the eastern side of Danang, in a little bit more of a, don't know about sheltered, but it's a little bit further away from the storm that we'll be seeing on these cameras.
it's still
got an
gusting at
update on
28
recon?
knots. That's alarming. Yeah.
Recon update?
Yeah, we've got an update on Recon. They just got a drop zone pressure of 960 millibars.
And what does the energy have it at right now?
It was 963 on their last update.
At noon Eastern?
I think so.
Well, that's lower.
Yeah, 961 with 4 knot winds, could suggest 960.5, 960.6, but most likely 961 is what they would run with.
Impressive.
And we're going to have more recon because AF308 is finally up in the air, and they will be getting to Ian shortly.
Canadian says, was there any changes in the storm surge warnings for Florida? So you'll see them on the ticker every so often down the bottom of the screen, some of those watches and warnings. I think we just missed the storm surge warning section. There's the watches right now. But the NHC are currently expecting between 8 to 12 feet now for middle of Longboat Key to Bonita Beach, including Charlotte Harbour. 5 to 8 feet for Bonita Beach to Chokoloskee, and also for Anclote River to middle of Longboat Key, including Tampa Bay, 5 to 8 feet. Suwannee River to Anclote River, 4 to 6 feet. Same too for the mouth of the St. Mary's River to Altamaha Sound and Chokoloskee to East Cape Sable. 3 to 5 feet for Dry Tortugas, Marine Land to mouth of the St. Mary's River, including St. John's River, Altamaha Sound to Savannah River. 2 to 4 feet for St. John's River south of Julington, Savannah River to South Santee River, Flagler-Volusia County line to Marine Land, East Cape Sable to Card Sound Bridge, Orcilla River to Suwannee River, and 1 to 3 feet for Patrick Air Force Base to Flagler-Volusia County line and Indian Pass to Orcilla River. So those are the latest storm surge expectations, and they are currently explicitly calling for Central West Florida, 12 to 16 inches of rain with isolated totals up to 24. Crossing back to the cameras across eastern Vietnam in the Danang area. That particular camera there is at Hoi An, which is just to the southeast of Da Nang, and they actually might get the worst conditions first, maybe, depending on where exactly the storm tracks. So it is going to be interesting to keep an eye on that camera, Daniel.
Yep. I just wish they would stay on that camera.
Nah.
But it's good to see multiple views, though.
And
luckily, after... Oh, sorry, Nathan, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for those who didn't get the news, Altony Bron reminds us in the chat there, Tropical Storm Ashley formed in the South Indian Ocean. Yes, Ethan, it did. They named it.
Since when? Do I have to go speak with the manager?
I don't know, it was earlier, but they named Ashley in the South Indian Ocean, and according to some analysts, the third tropical storm to form early on in that season in the South Indian Ocean.
When does the season usually start?
Usually late October or November.
Huh. Interesting.
That's an early start, yeah.
Yeah, so Tropical Storm Ashley to the southeast of Diego Garcia by a few hundred miles. Isn't going to hit anyone, but it is a curious early season storm that's been named in the South Indian Ocean.
Yep.
We didn't think we'd see that, did we?
Nope. Man, Ian's eyes buzzsaw-like.
Look back at those images, comparing the two storms side by side. Well, not comparing them, but looking at them both. Two different scenarios for two different countries. But there's almost similar intensities and big impacts on both. Noru.
I'm just going to be keeping a very sharp eye on if it wobbles a little bit more towards the east. Because if it keeps wobbling, that means a sooner landfall.
Yes,
which would be bad.
And a stronger one.
Yeah, stronger. Or even stronger than Cat 4 could have a potential. Briefly, though. What's your odds on a Cat 5 briefly forming, Nathan?
I don't know. It's more than zero. I mean...
I would
if
give
you-
it a
if
nice
you-
like 40, but not necessarily.
No, not 40%. No way.
Stuff. It's still not the highest.
Excuse me, 40% of what?
That's almost half chance. You can't give it 40% of Category 5.
Okay, 30.
30 is one
That's
third.
That's still a lot. But I would say non-zero. Maybe it'd be single digits. But the way it's looking right now, it is impressive. I'd probably give it a solid 5%, which is quite a
5%.
lot when you talk about probabilities.
lot.
It is.
Actually, quite a lot.
But then you think about things like, it's not terribly far from where the Labor Day hurricane was. So there's always that potential with the extreme warm sea surface temperatures, the oceanic heat content, it will all be there.
What's
And
the
when you-
ocean heat content where it is currently?
Well, I imagine it's
gonna
quite
track
high.
over.
When you look at that, and when you look at that storm there right now, just when you look at its current structure, if there's no eyewall replacement cycle, remember Irma, of course, when it was moving off the coast, it was a lot more ragged at this point, and it was dealing with loads of eyewall replacements, much larger too. This storm is
To be
still
fair,
fairly
Irma was
small.
in the more mountain terrain of Cuba.
And this storm is still fairly small, and if it doesn't have an eyewall replacement cycle, then hello, rapid intensification possibilities.
I think Cuba has ended any chance of a eyewall replacement cycle, unfortunately.
And if I remember rightly, last night there was on the ship's model, a 1 in 6 chance that the storm would get to 180 miles an hour.
What?
I think it had on the ships yesterday.
Oh, the ship.
What
What
the
is it
heck?
That's
Right
probably
now.
a misinterpretation. That's
You
probably
sure?
a misinterpretation. Initial intensity may gone up by 10 knots. They may have a
Well,
90
still category 5.
advisory. If you minus 10 knots, that it's still category 5, but the probability thing, not.
Well, all right. Ethan has a more valid question.
Not too
What
much.
are they saying now? That is a good question. I don't actually have it with me, so maybe one of you guys could find out.
What models?
The
max?
ships, the ship's model particularly.
For Ian.
Yeah.
It looks like a higher end 4. At least the main ship model.
Sure, it was 4.
Well, no, it gives rapid identification chances in percentages for various knots and
1
various
in
hours.
4.
Yeah.
So you mean 25%?
Well, we'll wait to see if there's any info on that. I'm sure someone might be listening to put it in the live output channel. Let's see if we get some more comments here. Another question, is Charlie still a good comparison for track-wise for Ian? Because it looks to me it keeps shifting east.
Charlie? 2004?
Yes.
Certainly some analogs to Charlie, but I wouldn't completely compare it to Charlie.
Charlie was more east when it hit Cuba. Is it? And
No,
the terrain.
Charlie hit just north of Charlotte Harbor.
In Florida, yeah.
The terrain is different and a little bit maybe more east towards Cuba. So, yeah.
And Ernie keeps posting that question. We did answer it earlier. Our team don't think it will go anywhere near the Keys or the Everglades, though. That's a little bit overkill. But further east forecast, I mean, I don't think we can rule out an extra. I think the furthest east it might get is Marco Island, which would ironically be the place that Irma hit.
Don't jinx it.
I don't want to.
To be honest, I think keeping the
Kenneth's
Keys
printer
was
is trying to talk to us right now. Hello? Kenneth, sorry about that. There's too much background noise from you, I'm afraid.
It's just my printer doing the work.
It's one of the most bizarre things
that's
I've heard on a live stream, but alright. Thank you.
So
Beautiful music.
Let's go back to
I
those
may a little bit.
live cams in Vietnam.
Beep.
Maybe can you also part my radar? I've shared screen.
Oh, yes, you do have a screen. Let's have a look, see what you're showing.
Radar.
Ah,
Yeah,
yes.
So you can see there's a larger eye right now after replacement cycle. However, you can see the inner eye here, like in here, those inner yellow areas just gone and pretty lopsided to the west, and it is a broken inner eye wall because of the easterly shear, and the outer eye wall not much better. The eastern side also broken because of the shear again. And this infrared tells you more. Yeah, you can see the northern side, eastern side. You can see the clouds are exactly the consequence of shear.
Yeah, you look around that
Yeah.
eastern edge.
Yeah, the eastern northern side completely sheared, and it's pretty much the eye was also very weak, because of exactly the shear impact. But you can see it's just exactly because of shear. The western and southern banding becomes very sufficient as current bring loads of rainfall and gusts, loads of rainfall to Vietnam, and even inner areas are also getting some pretty significant rainfall.
Yes, fascinating radar imagery there. Would you suggest then that the western side of this storm is actually the worst?
Yeah, the western side is, and the southern side as well, because of the monsoon support. The western and southern sides are definitely the worst.
So, in other words, the worst part of the storm is happening now?
Yeah, pretty much it's happening, and it's not expected to become better until like next morning.
Tanya showing us once again some more video there from eastern Vietnam. That's at Quang Nam, which is just the... Is that one south? I can't remember where exactly that is. That's near Danang.
Definitely the surge moving closer and closer to the roadway.
Quite impressive waves there, and here's the view at Hoi An, which is just to the southeast of Danang, and could actually
clear.
That could actually get a worse outcome than Danang if the storm continues moving due west to landfall.
Huh. It's very calm there right now.
It is. Wondering what's going on there. And back to that view at Quang Nam. Still trying to figure out exactly where that is. I just know that it's
that
not far
one
from,
branch that's swinging a storm off to the left side.
Oh.
Man, that branch could rip that power line clean.
Oh, man.
However, I think perspective-wise, I think it's far away from that line, so that's like... Oh, there was a good gust right there.
This is Force 13 Live, here for another half an hour during this evening's coverage of Typhoon Noru. Very difficult situation that we're all in right now because we're tracking two major storm impacts at the same time. We decided to do Noru coverage earlier on in the day. Obviously at peak time over there in Vietnam, we started at 9 p.m. running through until midnight. Then we're going to take a recess for a couple of hours here on Force 13 whilst we gather ourselves for more prolonged coverage, an 8-hour phone-in on Hurricane Ian later on this afternoon starting at 3 p.m. And we also have loads of Florida webcams stacked up to show you as well live on the air during that phone-in this evening. You may have noticed that we were suspiciously lacking last night. A few people pointed that out. It's just because we didn't have the time to put them on. We just didn't have the time to set up yesterday, but we have a lot more time to set up today, and we're raring to go with all of that coverage later today with loads of visuals. So this is the place to be for Ian coverage later on in the day. And we'll be starting that at 3.
To interrupt you there, Daniel.
Yes.
Why is the cam shaking? Is that a human?
I think it's being handheld right now.
Oh,
This
dear.
cam, which I don't appreciate. Someone,
I really don't appreciate that, yeah.
Unless it's a storm chaser, which I get, but still, I hope they're like over, a roof at least, but like sticking their
they're
camera
safe,
out
yeah.
the window. Yeah, because I don't appreciate fully that if they're just rawly out there, because you never know if a tree will come crashing down
Yeah.
in a big gust, or you could be blown over by a big gust. It's dangerous.
Well,
Unless
but
you know
to
what
be
you're doing.
honest, the biggest threat is the rain.
That too. Flash flooding.
Flash flooding, yeah.
So that is Gangnam, which I thought it was a town, but I think it's just the province. And that is somewhere south of Danang. It's quite a wide area, so I'm not sure exactly where it is. It could be well inland for all we know. But clearly you can
South of
see some
Danang,
winds there.
right?
What's that?
It is south of Danang, right?
Yeah, just a little bit.
The province, yeah.
But nonetheless, you can see how things are looking there with some heavy winds, possibly the tropical storm force. A live look out there in eastern.
Yeah, it looks like they're
Vietnam.
like from their second story window
Mm.
right now. So I just saw a frame, which I prefer. Also, since we won't hear on Force 13, I should just say this while I can. Since you're not, of course, covering the full landfall, I'm streaming the full landfall.
Great.
However, am I allowed to say my channel name? Probably not.
I mean, you're here.
Well, okay. It's Daniel's Weather Space Station. It's probably better if I put it in chat. Because everybody says, I cannot swear this enough. Everybody says, Daniel, Weather Space Station? I don't know what's with people sometimes.
Let's get some more questions. Do you think
Let me put that in
southeastern?
chat.
Do you think southeastern Carolina coast will get impacts from this storm from Ian? Tim, what do you think?
South Carolina? Yeah, maybe.
Definitely a rainfall threat for sure. Some possible tropical storm force winds depending on where Ian goes. Obviously, we've been seeing the models have been tracking a little bit further east than what we were talking about yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So from Hilton Head up to Wilmington, maybe up towards Morehead City. Yeah, keep an eye on this.
You have to remember that last year when after Ida made landfall in Louisiana, the entire East Coast will like suffer from flash floodings and rainfalls. So you can't rule out the possibility of East Coast being hit by the remains of what will be Ian in.
Oh yeah, I mean there's gonna be areas further north of the Carolinas that will get impacted, but that's so far down the line that it would be irresponsible for us to even try to speculate that.
Yes. Indeed.
Do you think these? I had that question. Sorry. Do you think 2022 still has capacity to have an above-average hurricane season?
There's still plenty of season left. We have October 10th through the 15th being considered a secondary peak for tropical cyclone activity in the Atlantic. So we can't rule anything out. We're still about 2 weeks out from that secondary peak.
And every moment that Ian spends at this strength, the ace counter is going up and up and up. And I can tell you right now, earlier in the season, the ace compared to average for that point of the season, I think it was around early August, was running at I think only 23% or something like that of what it would normally get. We're now up to 76%, so we're much closer to the average now. And by this point in the season, we've usually had 10.6 named storms by this point, and we are at 9, so we're pretty close to average right now.
In theory, if if you really were kind enough, Nathan, after this stream, you could live redirect everybody to me.
That is not
But
likely.
you're not.
No.
But that's not likely because you're
That's-
not like that.
That's very not likely. We were redirecting everyone to our Noru live tracker, although it's had a lot of issues because we're really lacking in the imagery department because there's some imagery
Wow.
outages.
Good job.
Yeah.
Worst
clap
case
moment.
anything, you could always redirect them over to Force 13 US, where we have rapid scan imagery and
What is
radar.
this becoming?
Oh god, what is that?
Hey, at least I'm keeping it in the
train.
network. At least I'm keeping it within the network. But on a more serious note, Nathan, we do have a statement that was issued by the Vietnam Met Service earlier. Basically, this is their forecast for the areas that are going to be impacted by Noru. This is all in Beaufort scale readings when I read this out. Cloudy with heavy to very heavy rain on the north. The south has showers and scattered thunderstorms with heavy rain locally. The north being right around the Danang, Ben Din area at night and in the morning. Strong winds of Beaufort 9 to 10. Increasing to 12 to 13. Strong coastal areas of 9 to 10. Areas near the center of the storm 12 to 14. Possibly level 15. That would be category 2, category 3 intensity. Southwest wind level 3 to 4, especially in the Phu Yen area. At night and in the morning, there's a strong possible wind of level 6, and it increases to 7 to 8. Later on, going to 9 to 10 during thunderstorms and possibility of tornadoes, lightning, and strong winds. So, Vietnam really anticipating some very destructive conditions ahead of Noru.
Another comment there, what's our prediction of Western Pacific, Ace? That was looking even worse earlier in the season. It was down to 16% of average. I can tell you right now, after what's happened, it's now up to 70% of average. So they always end up catching up in the end. Whether it catches up completely is a question mark. Still 70% of what it would normally have been at this point. Still on the low side. It's had 13 storms. The average by now is 18. Typhoons.
Some serious wind gusts right now on the live cam.
Typhoons were usually at 11. We're currently at 8. And majors were usually at 6 by now, and we're currently at 5. So in terms of big numbers, we're pretty close to average. Look back at those webcams, and still quite gusty. You might be able to see some trees in the background as well, almost silhouetted in the background, and they're really blowing as well. So clearly the storm getting very close to landfall. Looking at radar, and I don't know if Kenneth could support this, but from what I'm seeing, it is west-northwest right now.
From what I pinpoint, the radar is still moving straight west.
Really?
In the past few hours, yeah, still 15.7. Not much movement.
Let's go back to your screen. And
You can actually probe directly there, and it's still 15.7 something. Still more or less moving west, and has moved 0.8 degree in the past 4.5 hours.
just read out those coordinates there. 15.79?
75.
75, 15.75, and
109.43.
109.43. Just going to triangulate where that is in relation to those areas of land, just to let everyone know where exactly it is. So it is the closest location to the storm right now is not loading for me. Yep. Currently 96 kilometers from Kang Nagai. 102 kilometers from Tam Ki, 116 from Hoi An, and 135 from Danang. If it moves continuously due west, it will make landfall just south of Hoi An near Bin Min, which Tim mentioned earlier, I remember. So that is potentially the landfall location. if it continues to move straight west.
Nathan, we actually have a very interesting observation that I'm seeing on radar in regards to Ian. We may have a mesovortex on the northern eye wall of Ian. This is being supported by radar, so this is definitely a sign that Hurricane Ian is really starting to get its act together and intensify more. We do have recon that will be going through that northeastern side, potentially where that mesovortex is, so we'll have to see what they find.
Interesting.
Interesting development, yeah.
Both storms visible on our imagery right now. You can quite clearly see where possibly the center of Typhoon Noru is, somewhere near the right-hand side of that westward blow up. Sheared quite a lot on that eastern side of the main eastern convection and getting much closer to land. Landfall, how long do you think that might take, Kenneth? It's probably going to be before dawn, isn't it? Oh look, there's someone out there on Daniel's screen.
Reporting. It's probably reporting.
Yes.
Probably reporting.
So that's over there in Vietnam right now, certainly getting windy in some areas. But from what I can deduce, I'm trying to figure out exactly when it might make landfall, but I think it will be before dawn. But I'm not sure exactly what hour it might be.
I mean, Noru?
Probably like 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. local time.
Really?
Depends on how north. Depends on how north it would go. If it's more north, then later. It's straight west still, and then earlier.
You still think it will
You-
take
you
that
know.
long?
Depends on how north it will move, because the coastline is pretty much very northwest southeast direction, which slight latitude difference can make quite many minutes of difference.
But it's only got
So,
about
a
100
relative,
kilometers to clear.
100 and 6 to 7. I mean, yeah, 6 to 8 should be reasonable. 6
Okay.
to 8, more likely 6. Yeah, pretty much like that.
So it might be a dawn landfall then.
Yeah, a dawn landfall likely.
Send in your comments and questions. We've got only a little bit more time here before we go to a 2-hour break on our channel, and then we will bring on our main Ian coverage from 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be doing another prolonged 8-hour phone-in, and we've got loads of webcams to show you as well. There was a comment there about whether Fiona will get retired. I mean, we've no idea. I suppose we can start possibly discussing that. What did we think of Fiona's impacts in the end?
I
would
think it's
say
going to get
based-
retired.
You think?
I would agree, and especially on its impacts up in maritime Canada.
Yeah, as post-tropical, it's just a record-breaking of
Broke
even
the pressure
is deeper than
Yep.
even deeper than Sandy.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's like something that you may not even see in a category 5. I mean, the pressure is near like a high-end Cat 4, Cat 5.
You're
you'll
right. I mean,
see.
Matthew
As for some,
was weaker than
Cat
it.
40 power tropics, the pressure is as high as what Fiona's is at during extratropical stage.
Yeah, a handful of Category 5s didn't manage to get the pressure that Fiona did.
What was Fiona's peak pressure?
During extratropical 930.
930.
Goodness.
And even several hours after transition, it still has 931 with regular surface support.
Just crazy. Canadian posted in the comments there, Fiona had the worst storm surge damage I've ever seen in Canada. That's not surprising either. Roman says, what about Nha Trang? Now, Nha Trang is much further south. You're
Trang
looking...
is even souther than
But you could get quite a bit of rain there still, possibly up to 5 inches, which is about 125 millimeters. So rain is going to be your biggest threat. I don't think you'll get too much in wind.
But still, because of the storms, the monsoon, let's have the radar. Yeah.
Maximi says Ho Chi Minh rainy but safe, and Secret says, is it safe to travel post tomorrow in Danang? So I imagine you mean for Thursday onwards. The storm will probably have dissipated or nearly dissipated by then, so I imagine it will be safe.
Rainfall
pretty
is still a
much.
problem, but
Rainfall.
in terms of winds, it shouldn't be an issue because after it hit land,
Actually, from this radar, you can see the most southern side of Vietnam. That's not much of the issue. The southern South Vietnam, not much of the rain and wind issue. Right? Maybe just a touch of shower, but not so serious. Not much of a serious situation compared to that at the central south Vietnam, which you see those yellow and green. Those signifies severe rainfall, and it's expected to last for like quite some time, and considerable flooding is expected.
There it is. And the center of Noru's Eye, just over 100 kilometers offshore.
Yeah.
A lot of people coming in the comments here talking about various points. And another comment there as well, actually, and you might have to clarify this. What is a mesovortex? You were talking about it earlier on the northern side of the eye in Ian.
Yeah, a mesovortex is a small spinning feature that we usually see right along the eye wall of tropical cyclones. Usually when we see that along with lightning in the eye wall, that is usually indicative of a tropical cyclone really intensifying. Looking at radar now, looks like that mesovortex, at least on one radar, has died down. It does look like it's not picking up on either radar. So it was a brief mesovortex, but that still is a sign that Ian is still intensifying at a pretty decent rate.
Very big concern as it gets closer to the coast of Florida. When I woke up this morning, I saw it, Tim, and it was just after landfall in Cuba, and I did a little tweet on my Twitter account this morning showing the comparison between Ian and Gustav in 2008 and their satellite appearances side by side. And Ian looked better than Gustav did when it made landfall, and yet Gustav had winds of 155 miles an hour, nearly a Category 5, and Ian had winds of 125, so a big gulf in the actual observations from the planes or ground or whatever they use to get those wind estimates.
I think what's interesting, Nathan, because I went to bed about 4 a.m. UTC, and that was right about when the eye of Ian was starting to come out a little bit on radar. And looking at it this morning, we had a full eye wall. I'm almost wanting to say that the GFS nailed this, where it was hinting that interaction with Cuba would not inhibit its intensification. In fact, GFS hinted that it would continue to intensify while it was over Cuba.
I guess it sort of did. It just weakened when it emerged off the other side.
Yeah, it quite weakened considerably. Like if you use extrapolated pressure like 940s, we say 940s, high 940s in the landfall based on extrapolated pressure, and right now it just rose by like 14 millivolts or so, and now it is dropping again. Rico's making it's dashing towards the southwest. And sampling the northeastern side again right now, and we'll take another like 20 minutes to wait for the center data, which will be after this stream go off.
Yep, so...
Ian is definitely taking an Easter jog.
Oh boy.
Eastward.
And the more that cone shifts eastward, the more we're looking at places like Fort Myers, Cape Coral, down even possibly to Naples and Marco Island.
It also
if
means
continues to shift
more
that
of
way.
a. Also means a more likely chance for the Carolinas to get the
Oh, gee whiz.
get hit.
Yep. And actually, before we go, the new GFS model will have come out by now. So let's see if we can take a little look at that and see what the GFS is coming up with from the 12Z model run and how that might compare from the earlier 6Z, which we showed towards the start of the stream. So here we go. Let's see what it has for us. The GFS model running from 12Z, and it takes it further north initially and then curves a very tight angle curve inland there, makes landfall pressure around 968, although GFS often underestimates. I would say that's probably a high-end category 3 or even a category 4 landfall there, and that would be very close to Englewood and Venice for a landfall. So that's further south than the last forecast from the GFS, which I think said Sarasota, and then stalling inland for about a day and then shooting up northwards and actually staying inland the whole time through to Georgia, and then doesn't have the chance to re-strengthen over any water. So that's a terrible situation right there.
Hey, Nathan, I dare you to go look at the NAM 3.
Oh no. We might
No.
It's
as well
actually
just-
not. It's not.
Let's be
sub
serious
8.
right now and throw now, okay?
ECMWF has an update for 12Z. CMC
Yeah.
still has a land, goes right into Tampa Bay actually, and makes landfall pretty much in the city of Tampa. And that would still be
Looking at
quite a
the
strong
triple
storm.
R.
Probably a category 3 there. And then moving inland also doesn't re-emerge over water. ICOM will also have an update here. Let's see what it has. It has landfall possibly even further south there. Just trying to figure out exactly where that is. Probably just about making landfall. Well, it's Charlotte Harbour certainly. Possibly over Punta Gorda. And then moving inland. And then the icon has been advocating for a while that it would appear on the other side, and it's there again, and calling for a 967 landfall in...
That would be horrible for Cape Canaveral.
967 landfall near Beaufort in near Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. So that's a category 2 at least there for that secondary landfall. Let's just check HWRF. Is there a new run on that one? Yes, it's actually just coming out. We don't have the full run, but it is really strengthening that storm. 933 millibars there at the 30-hour mark, and a wind speed of 140 miles per hour. Not sure if it will make that turn. Looks like that's still headed for Tampa Bay. And the HMON, any news on HMON yet? It's out to 27 hours, and that is still headed a little bit further east. Looks like it's headed straight for Sarasota. 939 millibars, 145 miles per hour at the hour 27 there, which is just pretty crazy. HRRR model, which you were just mentioning there, only goes out to 18 hours, but let's just try and zoom in again to the southeast, and you'll see its gradual movement. Northeast looks like it's headed for maybe Englewood again there on that forecast. That's the HRRR mesoscale model. We'll just humour everyone and look at the NAM 3 kilometre for a minute. Now this is a crazy model that doesn't do it properly. Even it isn't calling for the storm to get that strong compared to what it usually says. But if you follow the track of it, you know, the track forecast may still have some legitimacy. And that's for along the northern part of Tampa, along the west coast up there. So who knows? But
The pressure is not nearly as ridiculous as the other day,
don't
but
listen to that
still
one.
pretty low.
The RGEM model is calling for landfall near Englewood again, probably close to Venice. But
Recon is approaching the eye wall.
it's a pretty sure deal there that we're looking at further intensification, then weakening. Most models here have it staying inland once it starts to move inland, and then but just that outlier, the icon, if it continues trending eastward, you never know, I guess. Maybe re-emerging over the western Atlantic. But that's the models on Ian right now, and we'll have a lot more to talk about with regards to that in our phone-in, which will start at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Let's take one or two more questions before we finish here. Would Connecticut get hit by Ian's remains?
Possibly. We'll just have to see later this weekend.
Yeah, small chance, but Connecticut's way down the track line.
Update is out from the National Hurricane Center. Ian remains a Category 3 hurricane, I think with winds of 115 miles per hour. Unsure on the pressure, though. 115 miles per hour, 961 millibars they have gone with in their 1 p.m. Eastern Time update.
23.3 north, 83.4 degrees west. We're finishing up now. We will do the redirect to the Force 13 US stream, which will show all kinds of radar and stuff with Ian. There's loads of options. It's like a TV channel, really, isn't it? Network. You've got plenty of options if you want to watch Typhoon Noru live on satellite imagery. We have that on the Force 13 main channel, as well as Hurricane Ian satellite views. But you can look at live radar views on the Force 13 US channel by just staying here, and it will redirect you there shortly on YouTube. But that's it from us here. We'll be back with full coverage and commentary and discussion and phone-in on Hurricane Ian starting at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on the Force 13 main channel. Make sure you check that out when we start it. But from here, that's pretty much it on our Noru coverage, to be honest. Landfall coming up shortly, and Ian headed towards Florida. Thanks to the team for helping us out during this coverage this evening, and we'll see you again soon. Good night.